Head to Knoxville, don't be late. Baker's Live, it's gonna be great. June 5th and 6th, mark your date at Dollywood, we'll celebrate. Meet Baker and more cool friends. Live show magic that never ends. Come to Dollywood, feel the vibe. With great people there, it's gonna be a ride. Rides, fun, and meet and greet. Baker and pals, the crew's so sweet. Get ready for laughs, cheers, and thrills. Knoxville's the place, it's giving chills. Meet Baker and more cool friends. Live show magic that never ends. Come to Dollywood, feel the vibe. With great people there, it's gonna be a ride. June 5th and 6th, don't miss the fun. Meet Baker and friends, it's second to none. Baker and friends, it's second to
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, whoever you are, what if any you might be. And no, it wasn't a Baker mistake. It was Jamie's headphones had a little trouble connecting to StreamYard because she was watching her sleazy stories on her iPad and... Oh, no, sorry. She was watching bird videos on iPad.
Oh, bird videos.
Did I miss you? Or what? If you didn't, you say you did. Otherwise, you'll hurt my feelings. When did I miss you? Oh, tonight, because you haven't been here in a while. I always miss you. Always blame the sweets. And Marissa is always... I think Marissa... We need to get Marissa some hobbies. Everything is wrong. The laughing lady, the intro music, sunshine. It's...
Boy.
Marissa is in a mood today, I think. Better not doing anything. Jamie was watching Hulk Hogan yesterday.
Oh, God. Too much of him was displayed.
Oh, did you watch a movie with Hulk Hogan?
Yeah, no holds barred.
I haven't watched it. Why is Jamie's avatar the 4chan logo? Because Jamie is actually one of the people on 4chan.
What does that mean? I don't even know what that is. Somebody said it to me before, and I have no idea what that is.
4chan is kind of... I have to be very careful because it's weaponized autism. It's kind of like Kiwi Farms and stuff like that. That's where you go if you want to hear the absolute truth about anything. You go to 4chan or 8chan.
I don't know. I just put up a 4-leaf clover for St. Patrick's Day.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know what else to say.
But new case, Jamie. As J Ray says, it's the armpit of the internet. Yes.
Is it? Never been
and
there.
Rumble is working. Hey, Peter 8 and Carly, Sui, and Helen from Holland. We're looking at a new trial. It's something different because it's not a trial. It's a bench trial, first of all, and it's a civil suit because Mr. Todd Mullis got denied his second trial. He did file an appeal, got denied an appeal. They didn't believe that he was correct in stating that the evidence didn't live up to what he needed. But now he's filing a civil suit. He will be bringing 40 witnesses to prove that he might be innocent and he might need another trial. So it's not a trial. It is it's to try and see if he can get another trial. But if you don't know the case and you didn't watch it on Hulu when they were covering it, this is from November 10th, 2018. His wife, Amy Mullis, was found impaled by a corn rake. No, corn like the vegetable. In their barn in the home in Iowa. He claimed she had a medical episode, was standing on something, fell, and accidentally just hit the rake. Medical responders were a little skeptical because it didn't quite look like an accident. And while they did the autopsy, something about the alignment of the injuries and the fact that there's only 4 prongs on the rake and there were 6 wounds kind of led them to believe she had had an accident, got up and had another accident. Or maybe someone helped her. You never know. So he became the prime suspect in the case. Also, they found his iPad. His iPad said organs in the body you can't live without. Did ancient cultures unalive adulterers? Again, stuff that I also have looked up, but that's because I like history. But she had an affair a couple of years before they had been in marriage counseling, worked it out maybe, but she was talking about now she wanted to get divorced. And he was afraid, according to the state, that if they got divorced, he would lose the farm. The story was he was out tending to some wild hog or some hog with his kid that day. The kid kind of lost track of him for a short while, and that's allegedly when it happened. The son was 13 at the time, and that was in 19, so he must be close to 18, 19 years old now. He was found guilty the first time, life in prison without parole. He then filed an appeal, didn't get it. They didn't believe that anything fishy had gone on. He claimed his defense counsel didn't do their job correctly and had admitted to stuff he didn't wanted to admit to. So it's a case of, can he get another case? Was he high on the hook? Yeah, maybe she just bounced on and off the rake. Yeah, we don't know.
I don't know. The stuff that I seen was, I would have liked to see it myself because
there was 6 holes, baby. I don't call you baby online. I only do that in private, Jamie. 6 holes, Jamie, and there's only 4 prongs. I know you did Common Core math, but
well, I didn't see the trial, so I can't say for sure.
No, I didn't see it either. But I read the transcripts, and according to them, they believe she has been stabulated at least twice, maybe 3 times with the rake. So it's an interesting case. Oh, and by the way, I had my phone on Don't Disturb on Stab Your Day. So thank you, Kelly, for the 3 corner kisses. I didn't get the notification till after. Hey, Hank's Tattletale Voice. That's a good name. Oh,
Hey,
and
Cash.
by the way, we have a few different things lined up. So we're going to get to this a little sporadically because tomorrow, of course, at 11, we'll be joined by the wonderful Valhalla and cover the Why Did Bev Blow Up stream. And Thursday, I've set up a What is the Coburger Really About for 1 p.m. Eastern with Yolio Law. So we'll be in and out. This allegedly 40 witnesses, could be a 10-day trial. I don't know, but we'll catch it. Don't you worry. Don't you worry about a thing. But we have a few other things. I need high fives for being on time for once. Well,
High five. High five.
the math wasn't mathing with the rake and her injuries. Yeah, that's the problem. That's a hell of a way to go. Yeah, it's what is it you say? Never go outside. That's where all the problems starts. No one ever died from sitting on the couch watching TV.
I mean, possibly. But yeah, outside is scary.
Yes, potential 40 witnesses is what I read around the internets. No, I will not cover the bedtime murder trial because, Jamie, what don't we want right now?
I don't want kids being unalive.
What is
No, thank you.
what is the bedtime murder trial about?
A father killing his children.
I don't know if the son passed away, but the daughter did, and he unloaded his pew-pew accidentally into their heads multiple times.
Accidentally, yeah.
I'm not covering that one.
Yeah.
I have had my my kid case. I'll probably have more kid cases this year, but right now I'm kid cased out.
Yeah.
It's good audio today. Yes. A girl in Georgia died from sitting on her couch. Don't say stuff like that because I want to go sit on the couch. When does the Jessica Barnes trial begin?
I don't know what that is.
It's there's so many trials, and when you're sitting here doing all the stuff we do, you don't really get to see all the other stuff. I thought you had pigs partly so you could get rid of a body. Why just let the body lie around like that? Well, to cover it up, maybe. I love that court is on time, but no one's in there.
I know.
The Melendez parents were watching TV. Well, they didn't die from watching TV. They died from their kids. And did you know, Jamie, statistically, it's 100% sure that if you'll have kids, you die. It might take 40, 50 years, but you will die if you have a kid.
Eventually.
Yeah. That's why life is a sexual transmitted deadly disease.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not good. Yeah, just to make sure nothing happens, always sleep at an Arby's. Don't ruin my dream that I will live forever if I just lie on my couch watching TV.
Yeah.
Look who she doesn't say hi to. Me. She says hi to you, but me? Nah.
Yeah.
You're like...
Of course.
That's because she's gonna fall in canal when she's in Copenhagen. Yeah, he even took her to the hospital. There's something about the 911 call that he claimed was wrong, but I didn't. It didn't really say what it was, so it's going to be interesting. Jessica Barnes was unalived in South Carolina by her husband, his lover, and a roommate. Haven't heard about that.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Oh. Were they driving like Jamie?
Hey.
Hey, Music Man, you are my favorite Buckeyes fan as well. Go Cornhuskers. That's why we're taking this trial, because it reminds Jamie of the Cornhuskers.
Ugh.
We don't make cheese Danish in Denmark, so ain't gonna get any of those. Well, let's see. Maybe she just had a lot of bounce in her when she fell on the rake. Never know.
Mm-hmm.
Granny thinks it could be possible. I don't even know what a corn rake is, so my dad got away from farming, and I don't intend going back to it. Even though I married a daughter of a guy who owned a farm. No, Jamie missed her own driveway. She lives in her driveway, but she doesn't even know where how to get into her own house.
Listen, I was chatting and it was dark. Got distracted.
My wife thinks I'm nuts watching all these trials, but this weekend she wanted me to pay for piano lesson for the grandkid. I screamed, no way. Yeah, don't do it. If he likes Mozart. Vote the GOAT name. Winner name is Pippa. Well, congratulations, Pippa. No, I think it's more like a rake, but just with long prongs on it.
Oh.
That's why I can't read. So it won't happen to me.
Shut up, Iris. I have a tennis ball in my garage to tell where like I can park my car so it doesn't hit the wall because I got to go in far. She just makes fun of me because I just hit the wall anyway. The tennis ball is useless.
So you just you hit the tennis ball and then just keep going because the tennis ball must be a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a little far up, but I go slow, so it's not like I'm just bashing
It's such a female thing.
my garage wall every time.
It's your dad who put it up, and he said, "This, if you stop here, it fits perfect." And because you're a woman, you'd say, "Nah."
Yeah,
He said
nah.
so, but nah. I'm just gonna go. I need 5 more inches. Doink.
Well, usually it's just a little bit. I creep up a little bit more because the way it was set up, like sometimes I got to walk around the truck and I don't know. Anyways.
No, Christine, this is not a hearing. This is a bench trial. There is a new motion filed to. I can tell you what they are. Today, there's a defendant's motion to exclude certain testimony of the weatherman or a double Lanigan hearing, and a motion to impound portions of the defendant's motion to dismiss for extraordinary governmental misconduct, and an affidavit of Elizabeth Little in support of impound portions of defense motion to dismiss for extraordinary governmental misconduct. Those are the latest and My computer just died. And the defendant's motion to impound portions of the defendant's motion to dismiss for extraordinary governmental misconduct. They want the portion of the filing that is subject to protective order, including reference to information that is subject to a federal protective order. Sidebar transcripts will remain impounded, and communications obtained from law enforcement witnesses that are subject to a protective order. Good cause exists for the impoundment of these portions of the motion because these materials and exhibits are 1. Subject to a federal protective order issued by the United States District Court of Districts of Massachusetts, and 2. Subject to protective order issued by the court. In support of these requests, Ms. Reed hereby submits an unredacted copy of defendant's motion to dismiss affidavit of Alan Jackson Esquire and supporting exhibits for the court file, and a redacted copy of defendant's motions to dismiss affidavit of Alan Jackson and supporting exhibits with all information subject to protective order redacted for dissemination to the public. So those are what else do we have? Defense motion to exclude certain testimony of the witness Robert Gilman, and the alternative request for Dorbert Lanigan, that's the weatherman.
That's so stupid.
The Commonwealth failed to meet its burden to establish the requisite qualification of Mr. Gilman as an expert to testify about the hardness of the ground. The Commonwealth fails to and cannot meet its burden that Mr. Gilman's methodology is reliable. And conclusion, Mr. Gilman is not qualified to render an opinion on the hardness of the ground in and around the area of 34 Fairview Road in Canton, Massachusetts, on the evening of January 28, 2022, and in the morning of January 29, 2022. In addition, Mr. Gilman has not proffered a methodology, let alone a reliable methodology. I love that they put in methodology in everything now. In support of his opinion of such hardness. For these reasons and for the other reasons stated above, the defense respectfully moved that this court to exclude the testimony of Mr. Gilman concerning the hardness of the ground in and around the area of 34 Fairview Road in Canton, Mass. On the evening, blah, blah, on the papers and without the need for evidentiary hearing. In the alternative, should the court not grant the defense's motion on the paper to exclude Mr. Gilman on his lack of qualification and his lack of methodology or a reliable methodology, the defense requests an evidentiary hearing to establish the failure of the Commonwealth to meet its Dorbert Lanigan burden regarding the ground hardness testimony by Dr. Gilman. It's a good little go F yourself. You questioned all our witnesses, so now we question all of your witnesses.
I don't know how you think a weatherman is going to, he has the expertise to, tell you how hard the ground is going to be. They can't even predict the weather well enough,
No, but again, that's one of those common sense things. And $2 says free Brandon. Yes, free Brandon. From what? Oh, that was easy. Forgot to unplug the cable box first. What's happening? I don't. Yeah, all of the good stuff in the motion to dismiss are impounded, so there will be a lot of speculation. This last week have been filled with speculation and people who have absolutely all the facts. Mm-hmm. I don't have those. I have no facts. I just make stuff up. A rake is too expensive these days to be breaking it using as an unaliving weapon. Yeah, that's... Oh, in this case, don't sound that there were nothing happened last week. She will huff and puff, and she'll, but it'll be appealed. I bet you if she tries to kick anyone out, because again, she relied on a misstatement by Mr. Brennan.
Mm-hmm. Should be interesting.
So they're trying to exclude an expert because he can't prove how hard it was. We need someone to prove how hard Brian Albert was.
You.
Yeah. The speculation has been so dumb. Can't wait for the hearing so we have the facts and then we can talk about it. Yeah, it's been so much, and every time you go around, someone will tell you how wrong you are because they heard. Yeah. I also heard that the earth is round. How dumb must people be to believe that? Chloe's mom, this is a civil bench trial to see if Todd Mullis will get a new trial. He is found guilty in unaliving his wife by way of corn rake. She was allegedly about to divorce him, and to save the farm, he thought, yeah, I have a corn rake. Let's fix that problem. He claims it was an accident. The problem is there's 4 prongs on a corn rake, but allegedly 6 holes in her body. So he was found guilty the first time, murder without parole. He then tried to appeal, claiming that his defense didn't follow the tactic they had agreed upon, and that they had admitted to stuff he didn't admit to. And that was struck down. And now we have a civil bench trial to see if he will have another go around. A guy with a hockey mask in a movie used a rake ounce.
I think you meant once.
Oh, once. Oh. I haven't watched any of those movies, Jamie.
Baker doesn't like scary movies.
Not some of them, but I never watched Friday the 13th or
Freddy.
what's the other one?
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, I never watched the Freddy Krueger ones either. This trial is the trial for a trial. Yes, this is a trial to figure out if they have a trial, even though he was denied a trial after having a trial.
And this happened back in 2018. So
Yeah. A few people saw it the first time and need more evidence.
I did.
Anime.
I mean, I only saw like I saw this like true crime documentary thing, and this case was in there, but it was just, of course, you know, the people talking about speculation, and then they showed like pieces of the trial. And I remember some of the pieces they showed, I was like, I kind of would want to see this because in full, because I felt like maybe, I don't know. But he claims that he has evidence to prove him innocent, and he wants a new trial.
Yeah, he'll be allegedly bringing 40 witnesses. But she was standing on something, trying to do something, and then fell over and landed on that corn rake. That's what he's claimed.
And like he was doing something with his kids. So I remember hearing about that and thinking, and then like he was, it would have been, I don't know, they were explaining like how long it would have took him to like leave and go do this and then come back. And it was kind of fishy. I don't know.
It's going to be interesting to see, but again, his appeal or his when he sued to get a second trial, they denied that one. That's why we're having a civil suit. But why we are, my watch isn't here. Why we are almost half an hour late, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if what state is this? EA, Iowa?
Iowa. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if they normally run late, but it's a little annoying because there's a lot of lawyers in the room, but no judge. Normally the judges are the first one. Oh, I have to figure out. I think I have court tomorrow. Maybe I should figure that on out. Do, do, do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, I have court tomorrow. Good to know. I broke
And I
up with
mean,
a girl
that's
that got her feet caught in a treasure. Turns out I'm a lactose.
Zach. I went to school with a bunch of farm people, and there was always something, and it was always very odd. So I don't know. I didn't see this trial in full, so I can't really have an opinion.
And Holly
But
Mac, I'm sorry to hear that, but hopefully you'll get better soon and your husband as well. He also drove her to the hospital while on the phone to 911. He said something during the call where they kept repeating the same part over and over and could never pick out the words that defense team said he said. Yeah, that's one of the things that he used in his appeal, that something the defense team claimed about statements during the 911 call and the way it was recorded. So I don't know.
yeah, I remember that too, and I was just like, I don't know.
I have court tomorrow. You didn't tell them there's a hearing for a woman in Massachusetts, so you can't make it. Well, I'll do you one better, because I'll start at 9, which will be 3 a.m. your time. Then I'll be in court till probably around 3 o'clock, which will be 9 o'clock your time. Then I'll come back, maybe pick up this one if it started, and then I'll be ready for the woman in Massachusetts at 11 o'clock your time, which is 4 o'clock my time. So
Yes.
I'll be up. I'll be doing mine, and I will be doing ours, and no sleep till Brooklyn. I was trying to buy tickets to the U.S. today. In the end, I had to stop. Every time I tried to pay for it, it just came back with we can't process it. I tried 3 different websites, and it just came back, can't process it. It's not like there's no money or anything. It's just won't process it. So I still don't have any tickets for the U.S. Did Jamie just call farmers weird and odd? Yes.
No, I
Because she
said
knows you,
weird
Valhalla.
and odd accidents. Like there's always something that would
Well,
happen.
you also called Valhalla weird.
I didn't. I always wished I grew up on a farm.
Why?
I lived around, I don't know, I lived around a ton of them out where I grew up, and it was always, I love animals and stuff, but when I found out that most people that own farms usually off the animals to eat them, I couldn't do it.
Yes, I am buying a return ticket at the same time. It's because I'm buying it through like a search engine for traveling, and because that's 2,000 Danish cheaper than going to the main website, and it keeps coming back. And then you'll say, well, that's because it's last year I did the same lower prices, got it no problem. This time it just don't work. So and with the price that it's jumped up from premium economy, I can almost fly business for the same price. So that is gonna be poor. So I'll probably have to suckle one of Valhalla's goats to survive.
Oh my God.
This is a civil suit to get a new trial. Yes, it's called something. I can't remember what it's called. It's called a. No, it doesn't even say here, but it has some technical term.
Mm.
Oh, not much American hospitality in this guy. Well, if the IRS want more money, you made more money than you thought. That's a positive thing. We have every time people get money back from the IRS, well, not every time, but A lot of people see it as they get free money. No, you just paid too much taxes. It's not like you won the lottery and oh my god, the IRS is going to pay me money. No,
Hmm.
it's because you paid too much during the year. Yeah, but I didn't suspect to get them. Well, you had the same money if you didn't pay them to the IRS. Thank you so much, Holly Mac, to help with your trip. Oh, you didn't have to, but thank you so very much. Yeah, I'll have to figure out how to. At this time with the price, it's almost cheaper to just do the thing I thought first and fly into Newark and drive down, even if it's a 10-hour drive every way.
You are something.
I am something. I'm something special. My mom
You
said
are
so.
something.
Thank you so much, Holly.
Special boy.
I'm special. Just like me and Zach, we are the short bus people. We wear matching helmets when we go outside because we fall a lot. It looks like the defendant might no. Oh my, Jamie!
What?
They
What?
are fitted. They are fitted with the lapel mics.
Oh my God! Stop it.
This can't be true. Now we just need the case to start. So you think Valhalla falling naked on his goat was an accident?
What? Who said?
What?
Oh my God! Who said that?
Zach.
Oh, Zach.
Hey, Gina Gomez. Unless you're my coworker, he has 5 kids and get about 3,000 more in his returns than he paid out in taxes. Well, that's one of I actually when I had kids, I had 2 kids, and you get a tax deduction for half the money you pay in child support. I don't know why. So actually, I had a kid for free because I had half tax deduction on both. So stupid. Why do I have to pay it? Then the state pays me back just to pay my ex-wife, who then has to pay taxes on the income. Almost like it doesn't make sense. Thank you, Edward. Yeah, always twice on the like button. Maybe 3 times even if you're feeling frisky.
I agree, Rage. It is very. I'm lucky if I.
The only problem is then you won't have money for when you get old. Because if there's no one to pay your pensions, well, we pay into it all our life. Not nearly enough. We get too old. That's why we are actually constantly raising our pension age because we take more out than we put in. So with a diminishing workforce, there's diminishing funds. So you'll have to say no thank you to all the good things in your old years. That's not what it's called. Retirement years. Not in the US, the parent that pays child support can't claim the child on their taxes. That's going to change, hopefully. They still have to use the money for the child. I had a buddy of mine who, when I was in the army, and him and his ex-wife, they had a kid each. Well, they technically had a kid each, so they had 50-50, so the kids just stayed with each other, but tax technically, they had a kid each, so they made money on paying child support to each other because it's not that smart that each of you have a kid, no, none of you have to pay, but because they both had to pay each other and got the tax deduction, they made money on doing it. It's such a stupid system. People don't pop up near enough, kids. Oh, we have our guy in the room, and he's wearing a pair of striped pants. Haven't seen that before. He looks in decent shape. I was doing leg day today, Jamie. Not that you care, but it was a good day. I hit 400 kilos.
Good job. 400.
400 kilos, Jamie.
That's crazy.
That's 880 pounds.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. That's almost sack.
So is like his family supporting him and stuff?
I don't know, Jamie. I picked up this trial 4 hours ago.
I'm just curious. I'm just talking out loud.
Yeah,
Hopefully maybe
I
someone
can't
in
answer
chat
you.
knows.
And people in chat will think, oh, why he's so mean he won't answer her? Because I don't know the answer.
That's
So
fine.
it's just to say, I don't know. But his defense teams look really young.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why this one sounds like she has a very nasally voice. Doesn't it hurt your back? More my knees. It'll hurt my back tomorrow. I don't do leg days when I have pain in my back, but I'll get it in the morning. I did calf raises that they hurt my back. That wasn't good. So I couldn't go above 150 kilos. That was, Jamie, it's weak sauce. You know, weak sauce.
Mm-hmm.
300-pound calf raises. It's just not do them at all. Yes, you're supposed to hear me and Jamie rattle to fill the air because nothing happens in court other than nothing.
Yeah, there's no sound yet.
So that's why we are just talking about nothing. Ginger, down girl. Yeah, I'm doing women's weight. I'm actually having quite a bad period right now. Well, not that kind of period, but weightlift. No, I'm hitting some good numbers, but then other things I'm just slouching off. I have do you call it a tennis elbow, where when you get that pain in your elbow? It's
Yeah.
every time I do
Like it's
overhead pull
achy.
downs, it goes straight to my elbow and I can't do anything. It's like 120 pounds. It's baby weights.
Baby.
It hurts my ego, Jamie. Because my seated rows is normal, but as soon as I'm going overhead, I can't do anything. It's annoying.
Mm-hmm. You'll get there.
Because I'm having guests over soon, so I better bulk up a bit so the fat gets stretched out. I'll have chest day tomorrow. I hate chest. No, I can't do chest day tomorrow because I'm in court tomorrow. Woohoo! Win-win for me.
What's your least favorite thing to train?
Chest. Yeah, because I'm very weak in chest. I can't get above. On a good day and with my thick elbow sleeves, I can maybe maybe get to like 220 to 220 is probably what I can bench. So weak sauce. My chest always been the worst muscle group for me. So I hate chest day. I like tricep work because that's full stacks, but everything chest is just weird. I have no power.
Well, usually guys don't like leg day, so that's interesting that it's
Well,
flip-flop for you.
I don't get pain in my legs after. Everyone is saying that's so crazy, but I don't feel it. I never had. Well, of course, I've had those days where you think, oh, the toilet is a little low today. But everyone else, when they have a hard leg day, I could train leg every day in the week, and it's not like I'm like one of the chicks who stands with no weight on and do the donkey kicks. I'll murder my legs, and I could go again tomorrow. Doesn't mean anything. Yes, I stretch everything. I try to roll my elbow, but it's only overhead. My massage therapist believes that it could be my shoulder because it's attached on the front, on the back, and then down on the lower of the bicep. So she believes it could be that, especially because I have the up-down motion. But yes, I'm an old guy. I have support bands on every time. Why is Dwight Schrute? Who's that?
From The Office.
I never watched The Office.
Is that a lady? It looks like a lady.
That's a lady. In an ill-fitting suit.
With a terrible haircut.
Yeah. It's one of those power suits, and it just makes you look weird. Especially when you have, it looks like a man colored shirt on. And if you don't have a tie on, it just looks weird.
She does, though, Sue. I don't disagree. It's the haircut.
I had that haircut back in the 90s.
A lot of people did.
It was cool.
It's not anything that should ever come back.
I liked having the...
No. No.
Can we get to it? We are 40 minutes late. Judge is in the room. Let's go, Judgy.
Well, J-Ray, I was just commenting on what I'm seeing. Like, it's not for that person. And men, I don't like.
Good morning. We'll go ahead and go on the record. In Delaware, PCCB 009057. Todd Michael Mullis versus the state of Iowa. Mr. Mullis appears in person this morning together with his counsel. I believe the first thing that we need to address is the applicant's motion in limine. There are, I believe, 4 points. Is there any resistance on behalf of the state?
Good morning, Your Honor. I'm just taking a look through it again just to make sure, but I don't believe we have any resistance on that, and we would join the motions as well. Obviously, any undisclosed testimony from their experts, hearsay, things of that nature, we would agree that the rules of evidence and civil procedure control on that.
Thank you, Mr. Bakke. The applicant's motion in limine then will be granted in its entirety. Counsel for the applicant, did you desire any further record on that motion for any reason?
No, Your Honor. Ms. Erica Nichols-Cook on behalf of Mr. Mullis today, for ease of the court reporter, we don't need any additional record.
All right, thank you, Ms. Nichols-Cook. Any other preliminary matters then that counsel wishes to address? Ms. Nichols-Cook?
Your Honor, we briefly talked off record about some exhibits. I'm still talking to the state about that, and we will update the court on the next break. And I think we would request to do a short opening statement, but we don't have anything else preliminary.
Any preliminary matters that the state wishes to address?
No, Your Honor, I would agree with that recitation of our understanding.
Okay, Ms. Nichols-Cook or one of your co-counsel, if you're ready to proceed with your opening, you may do so.
Yes, Your Honor, Ms. Thompson's going to do the opening.
Ms. Thompson, whenever you're ready.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'll stand just for this opening portion of the proceedings today.
Certainly.
Good morning, Your Honor. Todd Mullis has always believed that his wife, Amy Mullis's death was a tragic accident. He always believed this because he was on his family farm the day that she was injured. He was there right after his son, Tristan, found her. He was there as he and his son, Tristan, tried to give Miss Mullis emergency aid and rushed her to where EMTs could get her to the hospital. He was there when first responders treated her injuries like they were the result of an accident. And he was not aware of any information that would tell him that what happened to her was anything other than an accident. Even when police began an investigation and began to treat him like a suspect, he did not stop believing that what happened to Miss Mullis was an accident. He knew he had nothing to do with her death, and he didn't believe that there was any evidence that anyone else did either. His account of what happened and his beliefs, unlike the accounts of some of the people that you're going to hear in this post-conviction trial during this week, has always been the same. But at trial, he did not have any way to present evidence to the jury that this was an accident. And that issue is what the court's going to hear about over the course of this hearing. The court's going to hear evidence that he begged his attorneys, begged them all through pretrial preparation to investigate this case as an accident. The court's going to hear evidence that his lawyers disregarded what he was telling them. The court's going to hear evidence that his lawyers did not talk to experts or fact witnesses that would have helped them understand and present a case that this was an accident. And the court's going to hear evidence that his lawyers did not listen to his explicit direction to investigate these issues and to pursue this case as an accident. And because his attorneys did not listen to him, because his attorneys did not investigate or present these issues, the jury did not hear important evidence that they needed to hear to understand that the state's case was simply wrong. The jury heard the exact opposite of what Todd Mullis asked his lawyers to present. They heard his own lawyer in opening statements tell the jury that Todd didn't know what he was talking about, that Miss Mullis was murdered. They heard his own lawyer, in effect, tell the jury that Mr. Mullis was not credible. They heard his own lawyer make these concessions on day one, right when this trial began, and then really have no defense to present on Todd's behalf. His lawyers conceded guilt in this case without any plan to present another defense. The court is going to hear evidence that Todd didn't agree to this plan. He didn't know this was the plan. He'd actually asked his attorneys.
The story was him and the kid was out working in the field. The kid couldn't find him for some time, and then again he came back, and then they found the mom. I think that was kind of the gist of it.
To do the opposite. And at this point in the proceedings, the court has heard.
No, it has a very special name. It's a civil trial to try and get a new trial, to present evidence he wasn't allowed to present earlier. I can't remember the technical name for it, but he has been found guilty. He was his appeal was denied, and now they are trying to introduce evidence to prove that he needs a new trial. It's kind of like I think what Tyrone Tucker is trying to do in Miami as well. I'm not sure if it's the kind of the same, but it has a special name and I can't remember it.
In various pleadings at other hearings that we've had, the PCR team for Todd repeat this to you over and over again in all of the filings, that this was an accident, that this is what this case is about. And we've repeated that to the court because it's true. And it's among just the many reasons that Todd Mullis deserves a new trial and what this court is going to hear at this hearing.
Oh, the son was 13 years old at the time.
On behalf of Mr. Mullis and his team, we're grateful that after all this time that we're here, that Mr. Mullis is able to be in court this morning to remedy this wrong. Nobody listened to Todd at trial, but this week he'll have an opportunity to be heard through this case. And the court is going to hear other important evidence as well that the jury never heard, that is going to create at least the reasonable probability that the outcome of his trial would have been different if the jury had heard everything that the court is going to hear over the course of this trial. The court also knows that this is the rare PCR case here in Iowa with an actual innocence claim. And that is what the court is going to believe and know about Todd after this hearing. The court also knows that all of Mr. Mullis's most important claims survived the summary judgment rulings that the court made, and that the court is going to hear his claims and his evidence this week. And everything that this court is going to hear is going to establish that the underlying trial that Todd had was nothing short of fundamentally unfair. It was unfair because of the actions that his trial counsel failed to take, that any reasonable attorney would have done on Todd's behalf. It was unfair because the state withheld from Todd important favorable evidence that would have undermined confidence in the outcome of this trial. And it was unfair because the trial prosecutors did things that resulted in misconduct in how they presented the case and what they presented. And the court's going to hear evidence that makes clear that Todd Mullis was right. As we said, the court will hear that Todd's attorneys conceded right at the beginning of this trial that this was a murder. And with that sort of tentpole in the state's case, the state killing the jury and nobody disagreeing that Ms. Mullis was murdered, that resulted in a situation where there was really no meaningful adversarial testing of any of the evidence that the state presented. And the court's going to
Mullis, not Mullet.
hear evidence about each of these issues this week. The court is going to hear that the state then was allowed to present witnesses giving contradicted hearsay and innuendo that painted Todd in a bad light. The court's going to hear that that evidence painted a false image of Todd, of his marriage to Ms. Mullis and his family, and that made random Google searches that were done by a family with a house full of teens and preteens seem like evidence that Todd was planning to harm his wife. The court's going to hear the truth about those searches this week. Without Dr. Cruz, the state's main witness, telling the jury that this was a murder, that evidence is what it is, which is kind of silly, meaningless, evidence that really doesn't explain to anyone what happened to Ms. Mullis. The court's also going to hear from fact witnesses that have important details that help us understand what experts that the court is going to hear from this week are going to say, which is that Ms. Mullis's death was an accident. The court will hear from first responders and from other people through depositions and through live testimony who witnessed medical efforts for Ms. Mullis. The court's going to hear from those experts that I mentioned that are going to explain from a variety of disciplines how all of the objective evidence in this case demonstrates that Ms. Mullis's death was an accident and that the testimony that Dr. Cruz told the jury in this case was just wrong. The court is going to hear, either live or through depositions, from Todd Mullis's trial counsel. And the court is going to learn about the mistakes that they made and that those mistakes were not about strategy, they were just mistakes, things that were just wrong and cannot be explained by any strategy. The court's going to hear from an expert, Sean Castle, who's going to
Thank you, Atheist Stand, for 5 broken Baker memberships to Zach. That's a wasted one. Sarah Schwarzberger. Atheist Stand got one herself. And Britt Ketchel and Jano. Thank you so much.
to explain that the family's Google search history and electronic data from their home is exactly what it appears to be. Google searches from a family, from teens, from preteens that are using Google to search for things, sometimes random things, as we would all expect teens to do. And the court is also going to hear from depositions, from documentary evidence that makes clear that anything that anyone testified.
I didn't make a summary of this one. The original case is wife is found in a barn, fallen on a corn rake. He puts her in the car, goes to the hospital, gets on 911. Ambulance meets them halfway there. That's what happens that day. State claims he unalived her because she had an affair back in 2013, and she allegedly was about to leave him in 2018, and he would have lost the farm if she left him, so he chose to unalive her with a corn rake. Evidence of that is there's 4 pokes on a corn rake, but 6 holes in her body. No, Zach, not that way. And he had some suspicious Google searches. This isn't a criminal case. This is a civil case where they will try and prove that there's sufficient evidence that the case should be tried again, because he claims his defense admitted to stuff that he didn't agree with. But then you have to speak up. I don't know if the judge did, like we see in other cases, asked if he was content with the defense put on, but he's trying. They didn't believe it when he applied for an appeal.
Yeah, she's doing really good. And some of the stuff Farrell was saying, that's exactly what I remember seeing from that piece that I saw about it, and thinking, this is weird, because it was like they really didn't present the evidence correctly. He was with his kid, and I remember they're trying to make it seem like he was away from his kid a lot longer than he actually was, and the way the kid testified, something like that. And then it was something about the clothes too. If you looked at the clothes, they actually showed different than what they were claiming it to be. So she's doing a really good job arguing this.
Except 4 holes in her shirt, so she pulled it out and fell back on it. Yeah, I didn't watch the first trial, so I will learn with you.
About at trial about Todd is going to be a product of them being told that their friend was murdered, and believing their friend to be murdered, made statements that were hearsay, that were innuendo, that don't aid in understanding what happened to Miss Mullis at all. I want to say one final thing about the evidence that the court is going to hear during this trial. Mr. Mullis is here today because the state made the Mullis's private family tragedy public. And I say this because Mr. Mullis is here, his children are here, members of his family are here, and certainly for Todd and his family, they would have preferred that the investigation into Miss Mullis's case was private, and that their family's privacy was respected, and Miss Mullis's privacy was respected. If that had happened and the authorities had made the right decisions in their investigation, then he would not have needed a public hearing like the one today to get the justice that he would deserve. And it is truly unfair to Mr. Mullis, to his children who are sitting here today in support of Todd and his innocence, to have this be the forum to discuss the issues in this case. And I say that because the court, over the course of this week, is going to hear scientific evidence that is going to be difficult for this court to think about and to hear and to see. And as Todd's attorneys, and on Todd's behalf, we're going to do the best we can in our presentation to respect Ms. Mullis's privacy, to respect the tragedy of her death, but it's going to be difficult to do that in light of the evidence that we need to present, because Ms. Mullis's private medical information is going to be the subject of this hearing, her privacy in terms of her body, her privacy in terms of the detail of her death and her medical history, those are going to be made public during this hearing. Her private life. Everyone has things that are appropriately private about their life that shouldn't be the subject of a public hearing, but we're going to have to present and hear about some of those things this week, and present them in a public way that Ms. Mullis and the Mullis family don't deserve. This is not how Mr. Mullis would choose to have this resolved, but that said, because this is the evidence that the state relied on to charge him, because it's the evidence that was wrong, that was relied on to convict him, because his lawyer was ineffective in combating all of this evidence, all of the errors at trial that led to us to be here today, this public venue is the only way that Todd can achieve justice. And that's why he'll be presenting about these issues this week, because he does deserve a fair trial, a trial where the jury hears the truth about what happened, a truth that's grounded in science and that's grounded in what knowledgeable, experienced professionals have to say about what happened to Amy Mullis and what those knowledgeable professional experts concluded about the facts of this case. That's what this trial is going to be about, Your Honor. And at the end of this hearing, the court is going to agree that Todd's trial was undeniably unfair. If the state chooses to retry Todd after this hearing for what science tells us and will tell this court was simply not a homicide, then a jury deserves to hear the truth at a fair trial where everything is going to come out from knowledgeable, experienced people that will allow the jury to know the truth. And at the end of this hearing, Your Honor, the only just outcome will be to grant.
I don't know. Apparently, not a good one. But Farrell is probably more knowledgeable than I am.
Todd Mullis a new trial. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Counsel for the state, did you have an opening you wish to present?
Briefly, Your Honor. Thank you.
Are you ready, Mr. Duden?
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Josh Duden, along with Thomas Bakke and Scott Brown. I represent the state of Iowa in this post-conviction relief proceeding. As the court knows, Todd Mullis was convicted in September of 2019.
If we made fun of the female attorney's hair, this isn't a good look either, Jamie.
Oh no. I see she changed my mind because she is hitting all the points. I like her already. But yeah.
This isn't even a 5 head, it's a 6 head. Come on, fella. It looks like you have the worst comb over in the world. And if it's this far gone, just take it off.
19 for first-degree murder by a unanimous jury for causing the death of his wife, Amy Mullis. The Iowa Court of Appeals affirmed that conviction later on direct appeal. And here we are in a post-conviction relief proceeding, which Mr. Mullis has brought and commenced to attack his conviction again. The evidence will show, and the evidence has in fact already shown, that Mr. Mullis took the stand at the underlying trial and agreed that Amy Mullis was murdered. He agreed on cross-examination that somebody took a corn rake and stabbed Amy Mullis in the back 2 or 3 times. He agreed on cross-examination that he actually knew this wasn't an accident. And yet we are here today to ensure justice and a fair trial occurred. The evidence will show that sufficient evidence still exists to support the murder conviction of Todd Mullis' murder conviction. The evidence was enough for the Court of Appeals to affirm it, and the evidence will be enough for the court to deny this post-conviction relief application in its entirety. Many claims are brought pending before the court right now, but the important evidence was presented at trial. And a shrapnel shot approach or a shot in the dark, in a way, is not a way to hit the mark here. The evidence will show certainly that expert testimony will not be enough to attack what the evidence actually showed at trial and what has already been upheld on appeal. And that's that Todd Mullis murdered his wife, Amy Mullis. And so at the end of this, the state will ask the court to deny his post-conviction relief application and let his conviction stand to ensure that a just trial had occurred already, and find that his conviction of first-degree murder should stand. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Are you ready to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The applicant would call Carrie Pierce.
Let's not shoot the horse before the cart, but if there's a new, we can go back and look at it.
Your Honor.
And if you're over on Rumble, I lost connection. I am trying to get it back up. That's what she said.
The court's preference that exhibits be put on the screen for everybody and the witness to see.
We can do it that way if you have them on your computer.
We do.
Okay.
I know, I feel like you also have to allow or hit a special button. So.
I do. Let's see if we can get that rolling. Go ahead and have a seat. Ms. Piercebacher, if you want to pull that screen up in front of you just a little bit, because that's where the exhibits will display for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Can you see the attorney? Yeah,
I can.
Okay, and you can adjust that so that
Okay.
it's not blocking you entirely.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and I'll swear you in.
Okay.
All right, you've been called as a witness. If you'd raise your hand, you've been called as a witness. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be true and correct?
Yes.
All right, Ms. Nichols
Looks like Rumble is down. That's why I can't connect to it.
Cook, whenever you're ready, and just for your benefit, when you identify an exhibit, it will be displayed on my screen and the witness's screen initially. Once it's been admitted, then we can put it up on the big screen, assuming I initiate contact with all the right buttons. All right.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Ms. Piercebacher, could you state your name for the record today and spell it for the court reporter?
Yes, my name is Carrie Pierschbacher, K-A-R-I-P-I-E-R-S-C-H-B-A-C-H-E-R.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here today. Can you tell the court how you are employed?
I'm employed by Edgewood Colesburg School District in Edgewood, Iowa as a music teacher. I'm currently the 512 band director is my current position.
And do you also volunteer in your community?
Yes, I do. I'm a volunteer fireman, an EMT in Greeley, and an EMT in Edgewood.
And Greeley and Edgewood would both be towns or their own municipalities?
Yes, they are two separate towns here in Delaware County. They're closely located together, and I work in Edgewood, so we kind of run with both services, and both services do work closely together, so a lot of our calls are shared. If one gets called, a lot of times the other one will as well. Not always, but often.
And both Greeley and Edgewood, are they entirely volunteer
Yes.
organizations? And does Greeley run at the EMT level or at a different level?
We run at an EMT level. That means that we're guaranteed to have at least one EMT on the rig when the ambulance leaves and arrives at a patient.
What can an EMT do?
An EMT does basic life-saving support. We can do CPR, we can splint, we can do basic life-saving care. We cannot do anything.
Yeah, let us just recognize. I don't even have the booster on, and the audio is still great. It's
Oh, I know.
I'm actually normally my audio is set for 22 on my system, and it's 18 because the audio is this good.
Invasive, such as in IV, and we cannot administer any drugs through IV or through injection. We can give basic drugs such as oxygen, aspirin, Narcan for a suspected drug overdose, and we can give albuterol for a breathing difficulty or an asthma attack.
Okay.
And those are the 4 drugs that we carry in Greeley that we are allowed to give.
What's the next higher level of care?
After EMT, then you would get to the paramedic level, and they can do those extra things. They can start IVs, they can administer drugs, and that would be the next level up. Edgewood runs at a paramedic level, and then I believe Manchester is a paramedic level, and then Colesburg and Earlville, I believe, are provisional
Okay.
Ps, which means that they sometimes have a paramedic on board, sometimes don't, depending on the availability of their paramedic in town.
And would you consider all of these agencies to be emergency responders or first responders?
Yes.
And how long have you been an EMT?
Getting close to 25 years now. I think it was 2000, 2001, around in there is when I took my classes and completed them. I believe I started them in fall of 2000 and completed them in 2001.
And you mentioned that you had to take a class.
Yes.
What are the components of that class?
The class, I don't remember the exact hour amount, but there's so many hours of class time instruction. It lasted 5 or 6 months when I took the class. It began in late September, early October, and ran through March. We met 2 to 3 nights a week for 3 to 4 hours a night. Sorry. Yeah. So we, 2 to 3 nights a week. And then, so that was the classroom portion. And then as we were taking the classes, you had to pass the different units within the class. Once you passed the class, then you had to also do ride time and clinical time, so many hours working at a hospital ER, making patients.
Don't you get high if you take clean or pure oxygen?
I don't know.
Isn't it kind of like I don't know. What do I know? I'm not a doctor. That's Jamie.
Yeah.
Contacts and practicing your skills there. And then also so many hours ride time, which would be with an ambulance service, again, making patient contacts and practicing in ambulance situations. Then once that was all done, then you were finally qualified to take the state test where you had to pass skills tests. And then if those were passed, then you went on to take the written test. And then if that's what was passed, you got your license.
Perfect. And then you could start.
And then you can start, yep.
And do you also like recertify or have continuing education?
Yes, we have to do the certifications just changed recently. Now the current level is it's 20 hours of recertification every 2 years for an EMT, but there are certain categories that have to be met. You have to do certain hours of cardiac, airway, trauma, etc. It used to be it was just a blanket 24 hours of recertification, any topic. Now they have different topic categories that you have to hit in order to recertify.
Great. And for the paramedic services like Manchester, are they also volunteer or are they employed or full-time employees?
Most of the services in Delaware County are volunteer, except Manchester is a paid service. They are run out of the hospital, and that is their job is to be on call in the ER and run with the ambulance.
And so as a volunteer, if you're not on a schedule or you're not being paid for certain hours, how are you notified when your assistance is needed?
We all carry pagers or radios. Really actually carries like radios similar to a walkie-talkie, that if it's set on page, you only get notified when your department is paged, or you
I have it slightly sped up so we can catch up.
can possibly open it up if you want.
We do that whenever we get behind. And she's not talking that fast. She's wearing a walkie-talkie, but she is talking fast. I think that's a Midwestern thing. It's not like those hillbillies out on the coast.
To listen to everything that's going on in the county, and then you would hear when other towns are getting paged as well. But then when that goes off, then we know that we have a call and we respond to the station.
And you also live here in Delaware County?
I do live in Delaware County.
And did you grow up here?
I did grow up in Delaware County as well.
And so are you familiar then with the geographic area and the roads and where different landmarks are?
Yes.
I want to ask you specifically about a call that, in about November 10th, 2018.
Okay.
Judge, can we approach for a quick moment?
I've just been informed that there are individuals observing the trial who are taking photographs with their phones. That is not permissible. Any phone in the courtroom is to be turned off and put away. If photography, videoing, or anything is observed by any non-approved individual, there are obviously members of the media who have been approved, but any other individual who is taking photos or recordings of any sort, if that is observed or it continues, you'll be asked to leave the courtroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yep, you may continue, Ms. Nichols-Cook. Ms. Pierschbacher, you're very fast.
Slow down.
And I
apologize.
don't blame you. Nobody wants to be the first witness.
Yeah.
So if you can slow down just a little bit.
I will try.
Okay, thank you. All right.
I think the judge is watching my stream because she just told her to slow down. Why is the state seated so close to the defense table? probably because it's a civil trial and it's a small courtroom. It looks like they have a great relationship, so I don't think that it means anything. It's just how that courtroom is built. That's doesn't mean anything, but seems like they're friendly to each other.
Ms. Pierce-Bacher, I believe we were getting ready to start talking about November 10th, 2018.
Yes.
Do you remember that day and what you were doing?
Yes. That morning, my husband and I had gone to Cedar Falls to pick up our 3 kids. They had a sleepover with their grandparents the night before. And then as we were coming back from Cedar Falls and traveling north on Highway 38, just about home, my husband did have his pager open, as I had said, you could, just listening to traffic, and we heard a call from Manchester Ambulance to the Earlville area for what appeared to be a farming accident at that time.
And so when you say he had his pager open, are you saying that it was open to the entire Delaware County traffic?
Yes, we could hear everything coming across. It's called County Fire. It's the channel that all the fire and EMS are paged on. We didn't necessarily hear what all law enforcement was saying or what anyone else in the county. It was the fire and the EMS paging channel is what he had open.
And you were with your husband, Dave?
Yes, Dave, my husband.
Same last name?
Same last name, yes. David Pierce-Bacher was his name.
Can you tell me a little bit about Dave and why he had a pager?
He was the...
She has the same problem I have. She starts talking while other people are talking. That's I don't know. She's I can relate.
Fire chief in Greeley. He ran basically the fire side of our service, and at the time I was the EMS officer, which put me in charge of the EMS side of our service, but it was basically one combined service. So yes, we were both members of Greeley Fire and Ambulance. We both carry pagers. His happened to be open to the Delaware County channel at that point in time. Mine was closed to just pagers.
And it's messing with my mind. It's Delaware County because I'm thinking of Delaware.
And do EMTs normally work together in twos or in pairs?
Our protocols is that you always go with at least 2. You never leave the station without 2. And since we are an EMT service, one of those 2 must be an EMT. We do have members of our service who are fire only. We have some people who are EMRs, which means emergency medical responders, which would be the next level below an EMT. There's a couple of skills that EMTs do that EMRs cannot. And we have a few of those. But our protocols are, if the ambulance goes, there's a minimum of 2 people on board, and one of those 2 must be an EMT.
And was Dave an EMT?
He was as well, yes.
And it's my understanding he's unable to be here today.
No, he is not here today.
And why is that?
He passed away in 2022.
Okay.
Condolences.
So while you were driving back from Cedar Falls, I think you started to say...
You just say, come on, you say that when she said she passed away. You don't say, you say condolences. Just...
You were listening to traffic and you heard a call. Can you tell us about that call?
We heard, it sounded like Manchester Ambulance getting paged for what at that time appeared to be a farming accident. It said that there was a male subject who was transporting a female subject to the hospital along 170th Street, that she had been hit by forks, and that Manchester was paged out to intercept with them. But also at some point it was said that the original location was somewhere near Earlville, because I remember Dave asked me, why is Manchester responding to Earlville? And I said, I don't know.
Was that unusual?
Not kind of. Usually Earlville would have taken that area, but we didn't know, were they out on another call or something else? There are circumstances where different ambulances cover different territories.
And is Earlville also a volunteer?
They're also volunteer.
EMS? Okay. And did you have any impression or recollection of what the demeanor was while you were listening to this radio traffic from dispatch?
I just remember everything just seemed very confusing. We were just listening to the traffic and we heard Manchester Ambulance go en route, and we heard them continue to ask dispatch for a location, and that they said that they were coming in on 170th Street. And then at some point we heard them say that the subject had stopped so that they could start CPR on the female victim, but they were somewhere along the road on 170th Street. So Manchester Ambulance headed in that direction. And so we were still continuing north on Highway 38 from Delaware to Greeley. And At some point, Manchester Ambulance was continuing to ask for more directions or how far out are they, and they really weren't getting any information. And then Manchester Ambulance asked dispatch to page first responders. And that's when Dave and I said, oh, that's us. We need to get to the station, because we even flipped on our blue light, our light that we use to respond to situations, and we started heading right for the station, thinking that it was us getting paged and we had to get there. And then dispatch actually paged Manchester first responders. So we're like, oh, but we were already at the station at that point, so we just waited for a minute to see what would happen.
And for those of us that didn't grow up in Delaware County, how close is Manchester and Greeley, or along 170th Street?
Along 170th Street. 170th Street, it's also known as the Oneida Blacktop. It is a long road, I don't know, probably 12 miles, I'd say, between Greeley and Manchester-ish. I know it's 17 to my house, but I live a little bit further than Greeley, so.
At some point, while you and Dave were at the Greeley station, did you prepare to respond or leave the station?
At some point when we continued to hear the voice traffic back and forth of where are they located, how far out, Dave did get on the radio and asked Manchester Ambulance if he would like Greeley to respond from that side of 170th to see if we could find them, and figuring between Manchester and us coming from the two directions, eventually we would run into them at some point. And Manchester Ambulance responded yes. So Dave and I got in the ambulance and took off, and we radioed to Manchester that we were en route. We radioed to Manchester Dispatch that we were en route.
Okay. And so is it a fair characterization that the people needing help were somewhere on 170th Street, the Manchester Ambulance left from the hospital in Manchester, and then you left from Greeley?
Went from Greeley.
And you guys, did you eventually meet?
At some point, we were going to meet up. We actually found the victim first. They ended up being very close to Greeley, actually. They had not gotten as close to Manchester as we had thought they had maybe gotten. We actually found them just south of Greeley, 2.5 miles, at kind of the intersection of 38 and 170th.
Great. What did you see when you got to that intersection?
When we got to the intersection, the first thing we noticed is the flashing lights from the deputies' cars. At that point, the deputies had arrived. We had just passed that location a few minutes before, but didn't notice anything. Now we saw the flashing lights, and so we're like, that's where it is, and we radioed to Manchester where we were. We went to turn into the driveway, and one deputy ran to the road to meet us to make sure that we saw them and that we knew that's where we were going. So we pulled into the driveway. It was the driveway of a home that was under construction at the time. So there was nobody who lived there, and the driveway was very rocky and muddy. It was under construction. And
she's at 1.25, so she is a fast talker. She has a lot to say. She can't wait to say it.
So when we pulled in, we could see a deputy was performing chest compressions on the female victim, and there was a forklift nearby for the construction of the home. And so after being paged that we had heard somebody hit by forks, I was still thinking bale spears from a tractor, and then I started to think, oh, that forklift was somehow involved in this incident. And so
she is off-duty EMS worker / band director. But her and her husband, he was also working for the fire department, had the scanner on and heard that an accident had happened, and that's why they drove there.
Dave and I pulled the ambulance over as we pulled into the driveway to the left to get out of the way for the other approaching ambulances. I went directly to the victim to relieve the deputy who was giving compressions, and Dave got the equipment out of the ambulance, the Lucas device and the AED.
Okay.
And then he met me at the victim a few seconds later.
And if I missed this, did you know who was building that house or whose property you were on?
I did know whose property we were on. It's the property of Brian and Rachel Crotman.
Okay. And you mentioned that from the radio traffic and from the dispatch statements that you thought you were going to a tractor baling fork accident.
That's what I thought.
For those of us that aren't farmers, a baling fork, a larger item?
It's a large attachment that goes on the front of a tractor to move large round bales.
Okay. And did you have any concerns about a patient being transported by their family towards the hospital?
No.
And why is that?
Because it's common in our area. We're very rural. We all know what the transport times are and what the response times are. I know just for our own department, our goal is from the time of the page to be at the patient within 10 minutes. And I think the community knows that too. So, and I know a lot of people kind of think, well, I can be at the hospital in 10 minutes. And so, no, it is not unusual for a family member to just take a loved one on their own, thinking that they could probably get there faster than waiting.
And in your 25 years of being an EMT, have you responded to other farming type of accidents?
Yes. It's not uncommon in the area. It happens. It's a farming community.
I did that with my mom all the time.
Circling back to what you saw when you were in the driveway, can you describe the patient and
It's never good to be as mean as Jamie.
and what you did next?
As I approached the patient was lying on her back. One of the deputies was doing chest compressions. I observed she was wearing, it appeared to be heavy chore-type clothes, like a thick Carhartt coat. Underneath was a thick hooded sweatshirt. I believe I said she was lying on her back on the gravel driveway. Her head was turned slightly to the right, and her face, the right side, was covered with blood and a brown substance that appeared to be vomit. And the vomit was coming from her nose and her mouth. It was on the right side of her face, and it was also caked in her hair.
Okay. And
I didn't need that.
what was the first thing you did when you reached the patient?
I took over compressions for the deputy
Why did you do that first?
because 2 minutes is about the limit that anyone can do good chest compressions. It's just standard that you try to relieve a compressor within 2 minutes if possible, just because after that fatigue starts to set in and then the compressions aren't always as effective. I had no idea how long he had been doing compressions. I was guessing probably longer than 2 minutes at that point. So I was trying to relieve him and get a fresh person on.
Jamie, do you know when someone in chat is oversharing a little bit?
What?
Read the second line, word 3.
Start? Did she mean
No.
start?
No. She said what she said. She couldn't do it in her own car. She did it in her uncle's car. Thank you for sharing Race Crochet.
Yeah.
On her until we could get the other equipment in place.
100%.
And when you
Carol.
started chest compressions, were you doing them over the sweatshirt or over the coat?
The coat was open, but I continued to do compressions over the sweatshirt.
And did you observe any other obvious injuries or wounds?
No, not at that time.
And were you expecting to see something else?
Well, I was picturing getting hit by bale forks. I was expecting to see very large wounds somewhere and that I was not seeing. And so I was confused as to how the bale forks came into this picture because I wasn't seeing the massive trauma that I was expecting to see that I would expect bale forks to cause.
And did you know who the deputies were at the scene?
One was Deputy Thompson and one was Deputy Hollub.
Okay. Did you guys have a conversation or exchange information about what had happened?
We just started talking. I do know at one point when I started compressions and I asked what happened, one of the deputies told me, I think we were dealing with a fall. And then I'm pretty sure at one point I asked, did this happen here? Because I was still under the impression that that forklift I saw sitting off to the side had somehow been involved in this incident. And then that's when Todd, who was in the background, he said, no, this didn't happen here. This happened at our farm a few miles east of here.
Did you know the identity of your patient at the time?
At that point, no, I did not.
Did anybody else from the Greeley EMT team respond?
Eventually, there was a third Greeley person who got to the scene of the patient, Steve Engelken. As I took over compressions, I did ask the deputy to page Greeley for more help because at that point our pagers had not tripped yet. It was just Dave and I. I knew we had other people close by that we could probably get there faster, even the Manchester ambulance could, if they would just be paged. And the deputy asked for Greeley to be paged, and the dispatch replied with, Greeley's already on scene, they don't need to be paged. And so we asked again to have them paged for more help. And then Greeley was paged. By the time most of the responders responded, Manchester had already gotten there. So Steve Engelken is another member of our service who did get to the patient. I believe he got there at roughly the same time that Manchester ambulance arrived.
Okay.
But I know he was helping with resuscitation efforts at some point.
Jesus,
The rest of the Greeley people arrived, but already saw Manchester ambulance and Greeley ambulance and everyone there. So they stayed on the road and conducted traffic control and did not approach the scene.
Okay. And then you mentioned that Dave got the Lucas device and the AED off the ambulance. Can you tell us a little bit about what a Lucas device is?
A Lucas device is basically an automatic CPR device. There's a board that resembles, I don't know, maybe a snowboard would be the closest comparison I can think of. Has a slight curve to it. It goes under the patient's back, like from armpit to armpit, and then there's another U-shaped device that comes down and clips over top of that, and then from that device there's a plunger that goes down onto the patient's chest, and then once it's turned on, the plunger does the compressions for you, so then the manual compressions are no longer an issue and we don't have to worry about rescue or fatigue. The Lucas just keeps going with good quality compressions.
Okay. And so, and then what is,
To get her to
what's,
the
you know,
hospital.
how is an AED different?
The AED is an automatic external defibrillator. That is the part that actually attaches to the person's chest and shocks the heart to try to get it back into rhythm.
Okay. And what did you do? What did you guys do first?
Once Dave got to us with both of those devices, the first thing we did is attach the AED. At that point, we pulled the victim's sweatshirt up and we attached the two pads. The pads go upper right, lower, and then on the right side, and then on the rib, lower.
Yeah, and I don't even speak the language. She's saying that they were putting them on the automatic system to do the compressions and shocking the heart. It's not that. I get it. Yeah, the chest
just
compression
talking really
machine.
fast.
It looks so violent, but you need. That's the thing people don't get when you give chest compressions is you need to get in there. So yeah.
Rib on the left side. So we attached the pads, we turned it on, it analyzed, and then an AED is looking for a certain cardiac rhythm before it will issue a shock. So as it analyzed, we stopped our compressions and let it analyze, which is protocol. And then the first time it analyzed, it said no shock advised, which meant it did not pick up that shockable rhythm. So continue CPR, so we continued CPR.
Okay. And when you pushed your patient's clothing up, did you make any observations about other injuries?
Yeah, we looked, as we lifted up her shirt, we were looking for some other things to see because I was still trying to figure out how this injury happened. There was what appeared to be possibly a slight bruise on the right rib cage. At that point, it was very faint. We thought maybe it was a bruise, but we weren't 100% sure. And then there was also a mark above her right breast that looked possibly like a very small puncture wound, but again, we weren't 100% sure what we were looking at. We saw something there, but had not, were not able to determine what had caused that. So we made note of it in our report.
Did you observe anything, any injuries on her face area?
Again, possibly a slight bruise on the right side that was noted in the report. Again, at the time that we saw her, it appeared very faint. We thought it was possibly a bruise, but we were not 100% sure. So again, we noted it in the report.
Okay. After you set up the AED, did you then do the Lucas device?
Yes, once we did the first analyzing with the AED and said no shock advised, continue CPR, I continued manual chest compressions, and then Dave and the deputy started setting up the Lucas device. Dave started and the deputy assisted with getting everything in place. I continued manual compressions until the Lucas was in place and could start.
Okay. And you were able to utilize the Lucas to do chest compressions?
Yes, and then once it was in place, we turned it on and the Lucas took over chest compressions.
What did you do after that?
Then I went back to the ambulance to get the airway bag to secure an airway and to start breathing for the patient. So I brought the airway bag back to the patient, opened it up. I took out a King LT. That was the intubation device preferred at the time. And so that's what I took out. At the time that I had gotten that out, then that's when Manchester arrived on scene.
Okay.
I apologize for the interruption, but can we have a quick sidebar?
Sure.
Well, the judge called a sidebar. Being a farmer, I think, is more dangerous than law enforcement. So much machinery to work with. I think being a oil rig worker is the most dangerous, or is it still being a crab fisherman in Alaska? But other than that, I think farming is one of the most dangerous jobs to have. You can get snagged in a lot of machinery.
Go ahead and continue the talk.
Again, folks, I want to be crystal clear that unless you are an approved member of the media, there is to be no photography, recording, social media posting, or any
just answered one on X
recording of
because you
any
asked something about
kind
Judge Bev. Come on now. Be this man.
of this proceeding. I am aware that there is a specific individual in this courtroom who has posted photos on a social media site.
Don't threaten them. Don't do the Del Brooks thing. Just go down there and say contempt of
It's
court.
time to get out. Yeah.
Yeah.
From this trial this morning. It is only because I cannot ascertain specifically if that photo or those photos were posted before or after my preliminary warning that that individual is not already being removed from the courtroom by a deputy. If there are any further posts, the individual will be removed, as will any others. We will not have this proceeding derailed by members of the public who are not following the
Can she
restrictions
talk slower? Jeez,
on recording.
It's just because we just listened to Speed Lady. Come on, Jamie. She's trying
He's
to
so
make it
slow.
clear.
Photography and the rules of this court. My apologies to the witness and to counsel. I hope we have no further interruptions. Ms. Pierschbacher, again.
I had a buddy of mine's dad who died with a silo accident, but that was because he was demolishing it and it fell on him. A little bit different, but it was still a silo accident.
If you can try to slow down. I think you just get faster and faster. Okay. All right. Ms. Nichols-Cook, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Pierschbacher, maybe act like we're high schoolers, I guess, and we don't listen the first time and just go slow for us. But we were talking about an airway bag, and could you help us all understand a little bit about what you were using? I think we've all seen mouth to mouth, and so tell me about the airway bag.
Okay, so our airway bag specifically carries all of the equipment that we would need if a patient were to have a breathing problem. There is an oxygen tank in that airway bag. There is also it's called an AMVU bag. It's the bag that you put over their mouth and squeeze to help ventilate them. That we carry in there. There is also nasopharyngeal airways, which go into the patient's nose, and oral airways, which are hard airways that go into the patient's mouth that are used to hold the tongue out of the way. Those airways are used for a patient who is still semi-conscious and would have a gag reflex, who would not tolerate anything down their throat. In this particular case, we used a King LT, which is a long tube that is inserted into the patient's mouth, and it goes into their trachea, and there are two balloons that blow up to hold it into place, and then there's a small opening at the top that IMVU bag I was talking about. If you take the mouthpiece off, the round tip goes right onto the top of the King airway, and then we can ventilate directly into the patient's lungs. So that is what I was getting, the airway bag, and that's what we had decided was our best option for that patient at that time.
Okay. And was your patient responsive at all?
No.
And in order to insert the tube then into your patient, did you have to do anything with her mouth or her nose?
Yes. So when I inserted the tube, what I did is I positioned myself at her head so that she was directly in front of me. I was at the top of her head. Other people were still working on doing things with her. I was kneeling on the ground above her head, and then what I do to insert is I reach through and I grab her lower jaw and her tongue, and I lift it up to pull the tongue out of the way and to open her mouth. And then with my other hand, I take the tube.
Do we need this much detail? I
don't know.
I'm not sure I need to get my CPR class from when I was in the Navy again. That's I don't need it.
And insert it into her airway, and then we have a syringe that then blows up those balloons to hold that tube into place.
Okay. Earlier, you mentioned that the right side of your patient's face had blood or maybe a vomit substance.
Yes.
Was that still present when you were inserting the tube?
It was still present, and before the tube was inserted, we used a suction device to suction her mouth clean and clear so that we could get the tube in without getting any extra debris into her air.
They are trying to get a new trial. He was denied a trial on appeal, so it's a civil case to show the judge there is sufficient evidence to give him another trial. He claims that his defense short-shifted him in the first trial.
Airway.
Would getting debris in her airway be harmful to your efforts to get her breathing?
Well, it could, because then it would be basically like aspirating whatever that was, and then it would just cause further problems for the patient down the road.
Okay. And I think you mentioned that as you were working to do this, the Manchester paramedics arrived.
Yes, the Manchester crew arrived because at first when they arrived, we filled them in on the situation and told them what we had done so far and what we knew. And then I actually backed off on the airway for a moment just because at that time it was their scene to control. And I just said, we're about to insert an airway. And then that's when they said, well, you are an EMT, you can do that skill, right? And I said, yes, I can. And then they said, please do help us. And so we stayed on scene and continued to help them as they were doing what they were doing.
And in addition to suctioning out the mouth and the nose, did you also have to move her face or handle, wipe things off of her?
I don't remember if we did any wiping. I do know we did have to suction, and then her head was turned slightly to the right, so we would have pulled her head back to center to make it easier to insert that tube.
Okay. After you inserted the airway tube, what do you remember doing next?
At that point, then we hooked up the airway bag, and I started to ventilate for her. The ventilations were going in harder than I expected them to. I was feeling some resistance, which is not normal. But at that time, that's when we were getting ready to move the patient. They had brought a sheet from one of the ambulances. And so the way that we lifted her that day is we did something called a log roll, where we roll the patient onto her side, put the sheet under her, pull it back out from the other side, and now she's laying on a sheet instead of on the bare ground. And then we're able to use that sheet to lift her and get her onto the cot and into the ambulance. So the sheet was the method that we used that day to get her up onto the cot and loaded. So at the time I got the airway in place was the time that we rolled her, got her onto the sheet, and moved her towards the ambulance. I was ventilating the whole way to the ambulance. When we got to the ambulance, I did tell the paramedic, please check this airway. There's more resistance than there should be. Make sure I got it right. And then I handed the airway bag off to one of the Manchester personnel, and they continued care to Manchester.
Did you know any other injuries during that log roll procedure?
During the log roll procedure, I did not see any other injuries myself. As the patient was rolled, I moved with her face to continue to give ventilations. I did hear one of the Manchester responders say, we have a through and through, when they saw her back. I personally never saw her back at the scene. I don't know what it looked like, but I did hear one of the Manchester responders make that comment.
Did you note any other injuries to her mouth, a cut, or anything like that?
No.
Yeah, I believe she had some abrasion to her upper lip, but I'm not sure. I think I read that somewhere.
And in your experience, is the act of performing CPR or using a Lucas device a traumatic event to the body?
It can be, yes.
Was your care ending then as the patient was loaded into Manchester's ambulance?
Yes, that is where our care of the patient ended. We handed off to Manchester. Shortly after Manchester ambulance arrived on scene. So did Manchester first responders because they were paged out after. So between those two crews, they got enough people in the back of the ambulance to continue care all the way to Manchester. So it was Manchester's full ambulance crew. And then I believe a couple of their first responders who came out in the first responder rig also went back with them to be extra hands to help with resuscitation. So we were not needed to go in the ambulance with them. They had enough people.
Okay. And at some point, do you learn the patient's name?
Yes, as we were loading her into the ambulance, one of the Manchester responders or ambulance members said, "We need a name and a birth date for the victim." And then that's when we asked, "What is her name and birth date?" And that's when we learned it was Amy Mullis. Up until that point, I didn't realize who we were working on.
Had you met Amy Mullis before November 10th, 2018?
Yeah, we were acquaintances. Amy's and Todd's daughter was in gymnastics with my daughter, so we would see each other at gymnastics events, and they also attended the same church as us.
Did you realize the individual providing information to you during your care was Todd Mullis?
I did not realize that either at the time. It was out of context. I was used to seeing him together with the family, and this was out of context. So no, I did not place that. That was Todd as well.
Can you describe Todd's demeanor while you were on the scene?
From what I observed, he seemed to be kind of anxious, nervous. He seemed to be pacing in the background. He wasn't interfering with resuscitation efforts at all, but he was close by to provide information as we would need it. As if we would start to talk about something or ask something, he would respond right away with information he had or knew. But yeah, he was close by enough to give information, was pacing.
Nothing that alarmed you?
No.
I'm sorry, let's start over. Did you also then know Todd and Amy's children?
I did. At that point in time, I knew the younger two children better. Wyatt and Taylor went to church with us. I was their Sunday school teacher for a while. I knew Tristan also at that point from seeing him in church with the family, but I did not know him as well as I knew the younger two.
Did you see Tristan on November 10th, 2018?
Yes, a little bit later. Up until that point, I had not noticed him. After Amy was loaded into the ambulance and Manchester took off for the hospital, we turned to start getting our stuff picked up, and that's when I realized Tristan was there as well. He was standing back a lot further than Todd. There was a trailer attached to the pickup that they had been using to try to get Amy to the hospital, and he was on the back side of the trailer.
After the Manchester ambulance left, what did you and the other Greeley EMTs do?
Because some of the Manchester first responders had left in the ambulance service, or in the Manchester ambulance, that left a couple of their first responder vehicles unmanned. So our other responder, Steve, who was on scene, he actually helped Manchester to get the rest of their vehicles back to their station. Dave and I took the ambulance and we followed to Manchester because our Lucas device was still being used in resuscitation efforts. And so we said we would just follow and wait for it to be done to get it back. So we proceeded to Manchester. We stopped at the fire station we stopped at Manchester Fire Station to pick our other responder, Steve, up because that's where they keep their first responder vehicles after he helped them drop those off. And then the three of us proceeded to the hospital to wait for the Lucas.
Okay. When you got to the hospital, where did you go?
We just went into the common area in the ER, the hallways. We were just planning to hang out in a corner and try to stay out of the way until things were done.
And did you observe Todd Mullis or any of the other family there as well?
Todd, I believe, was there and had a friend with him. And they were in kind of the family waiting room. They had a special waiting room, not the general public waiting room that everyone goes into. There's a separate one back in the ER for family to wait in. And so he was in there with a friend.
Okay. Did medical staff approach you and Dave or Steve?
One of the RNs came up to us as soon as we got there and
calls for your stay around.
What did you and Dave do after you interacted with medical staff?
We waited. Dave we would take turns waiting in the family room with Todd. Dave spent most of the time in there. I went in, I believe, once for a couple of minutes.
And were you asked to go in, were you instructed or informed that you needed to go into the waiting room?
Objection calls for hearsay or relies on hearsay testimony.
Your Honor, it's been offered to show what she did and why she did it.
Overruled. The witness can answer.
We were told to make sure Todd was not left alone and to make sure one of us was with him at all
Objection
times.
hearsay again asks that the objection precede the response, Your Honor.
Overruled. The answer will remain in the record.
In your 20 plus years of experience as an EMT, has that ever happened to you before?
No.
Did you make any observations of Todd's demeanor while you were in the waiting room or at the hospital?
It was similar to on scene. He appeared anxious to me, was pacing.
At some point, were you able to not stay in the family waiting room any longer?
Another RN came in.
Are you familiar with former Sheriff LeClaire?
I am.
Did you see him at the hospital on November 10th?
I did.
Did you speak with him or see him speak to anybody?
I did not.
Objection calls for a hearsay response again, Your Honor.
I didn't ask what was said, Your Honor.
I did not speak to him myself. I did observe he and Dave speaking to each other.
And since Dave was a fire chief in the county, was that unusual or alarming?
No.
Okay. At some point, were you able to retrieve your equipment and depart Manchester Hospital?
Yes, at some point when the Lucas device was finished being used, we got it back and then we left and returned to Greeley's fire station.
Okay.
I really don't like that. What's his demeanor? It's that body language crap again. Don't care if it's the state or if it's the defense that ask about it. Because what's the right demeanor to have if your wife fell on a rake? Ah, but it's just one of those where it annoys me every time they do it because did they look sufficiently upset?
Yeah. Oh, I know. I hate it too.
Yeah, and you can be like Valhalla who cries every time he goes outside just because I saw a butterfly, or you can be a stoic like me who never does it. You don't know how people will react. It's just one of those. You have to act in a certain way, or you are guilty, not guilty. I don't understand it.
Did you respond to any other EMS calls that day?
We did have another EMS call later that night.
Did that take you back to the Regional Medical Center in Manchester?
Yes, we transported that patient there as well.
Did you ever learn that there was concerns or instructions to complete your report in a certain way?
When we returned back for that second EMS call that night, we were actually with Edgewood crew at that time. Edgewood was the transporting service. They needed extra help, so Dave and I both ended up being in the back with the patient on the way in. When we got to the hospital, I stayed in the rig and started cleaning everything up. Dave and the rest of the Edgewood crew members actually delivered the patient into the ER. When Dave returned to the ambulance after dropping the patient off, he told me that...
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay within hearsay.
Sustained.
Let me try to rephrase a little bit there. Did you complete a report about the service call regarding Amy Mullis?
I did.
And did your husband, Dave Piersbacher...
Why can't he be anxious? This is crazy. Yeah, and again, was he anxious or was he afraid he was going to be found out, or was that just how he reacted every time there's a crisis? He just walked around and didn't really know where to put himself. I hate it when they try and I know the defense is doing this to say, well, he clearly was upset that it happened, but I don't know how it's not blatant speculation to try and tell someone how they are reacting at the scene, because you don't know. You don't know them.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll always try to get it in if it's good for their case.
Or contribute to that report?
He did.
Did your colleague, Steve Ingleton, also contribute?
He did.
Okay. And did you have an understanding that you need to take some extra care or caution when writing your report?
Yeah, most reports are completed thoroughly, though I usually I always make a point that every report is completed thoroughly.
And at some point, did you learn that Amy's death was being investigated as a murder?
I did.
And do you recall when you learned that?
That evening at the ER.
Okay. Got a copy of your report here marked as Exhibit 216. If we can show that to you to make sure we have the right report. We'll try to get it on the screen there for you.
Yeah, some people do that as well. If I don't see it, it didn't happen. I knew a person who wouldn't turn on the TV with the news because then all the bad stuff didn't happen. That's not how it works. But it was fast that they honed in on him already that night at the hospital.
Yeah.
That it must have been an unaliving.
Mr. Clark, have you had an opportunity to look at Exhibit 216?
Yes.
Okay. And does this appear to be the report that you wrote and submitted regarding?
It appears to be.
And can you tell the date that you submitted this report?
I'm not sure it's on this front page, but if I remember correctly, it was November 13th.
And so that would have been just a couple of days after
Yes.
you responded to the call? And I think you just said you submitted it. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means? Like, how do you submit it? Where does it go?
The system that
But I'm pretty sure the people who were in that flood or that avalanche felt it just the same.
we use for EMS reporting is called image trend. We all go in and it's what every EMS service uses. We complete the report and then it stays open. And when we are satisfied that it is done, we hit lock and submit, and it is locked and submitted, and then it uploads to the state database. And at that point, then it is considered submitted.
Okay. And after you submitted your report here in Exhibit 216, did law enforcement ever talk to you about your observations from November 10th or your report?
No.
Did anybody from the Delaware County Attorney's Office talk to you about it?
No.
And I apologize, I said law enforcement earlier, specifically Delaware County Sheriff. Did anyone talk to you? The Iowa DCI?
No.
And have you ever spoken to anybody from the Iowa Attorney General's office about the substance of your report?
No.
And were you aware, or are you aware now, that Todd Mullis was charged with Amy's murder and tried and convicted of that?
Yes, I am aware of that.
And then we'll flip to Exhibit 215 and have you identify that for us.
Yeah, this is an affidavit.
So 215 is an affidavit that you signed regarding November 10th?
Yes.
And my copy is a little faint, so maybe yours is a little better, but is it dated in 2023?
I believe so. I don't see the signature page on my screen, but I believe that's when it was.
We'll scroll for you.
Yes, 2023.
And prior to this affidavit in 2023, did you speak with any attorney representing Mr. Mullis?
No.
any private investigators or anybody talk to you?
No.
Was there anything about Todd's behavior or demeanor on November 10th that was alarming to you or caused you concern?
No.
Your Honor, if I could have one moment, and then I think we already have an agreement to admit 215 and 216, but I would formally move to admit those exhibits. Got one or two more. I apologize. Thank you for your patience. Ms. Piersbacher, while you were on the scene that day providing care and waiting at the hospital, did you ever observe any or hear anything that caused you to think that Ms. Mullis's injuries were not an accident?
No.
Okay. And I know you said earlier that it's not uncommon for there to be farming accidents, and so can you expand a little bit on that, like what types of accidents you have responded to over the years?
Your Honor, I am going to object on the grounds of beyond the scope of the lay witness's testimony. She's not a certified expert, and it's her testimony as to other incidents are irrelevant for her insight and for purposes of this proceeding.
Sustained.
Let me re-ask that. Have you responded personally as an EMT to other farming accidents?
Yes.
And have those included things like falls?
Yes.
And onto whether it's a farm implement or a fork or some other tool?
Objection, Your Honor. Again, this is irrelevant. It's both beyond scope, not an expert, and simultaneously leading.
Your Honor, I'm asking for her personal experience. I'm not asking for an expert opinion.
Yes, we have been called to emergencies that involve farm implement, and we have been called to emergencies where people have fallen. We've been called to emergencies where people have been trapped. Yeah, there's several different types of farming emergencies that happen.
Okay. One last question is, do you have any recollection of the weather on November 10th? It's winter in Iowa, but other than that, do you have anything?
It was very cold. I remember it was very cold, very bitter. I believe there was like a skiff of snow on the ground at the time.
Okay. Nothing further from you, Your Honor.
We got snow.
Counsel, any objection to exhibits 216 and 215?
Your Honor, no objection to the inclusion of 216, but we would object to the inclusion of Exhibit 215. As it is hearsay, includes hearsay within hearsay as well, and is inadmissible. I believe it also predates the filing of this case and therefore was not made as part of the record for any sort of consistency.
216 is admitted. Counsel, did you want to respond to the objections 215?
Yes, Your Honor. I think there might be some confusion. I guess it was my impression the state had already didn't have any objections to 215, but additionally, it's a part of the original post-conviction relief application filing in this matter. Ms. Piersbacher has identified it, and I can ask her some additional questions as far as, where the information comes from in it. But I do believe it's an admissible document that this court should consider.
Well, to the extent it was identified as an attachment, I guess, to the petition, it's there. The court will consider it in that fashion. Generally, I'm not going to admit affidavits, though, of witnesses who are here to testify. So 215 is not going to be admitted as a separate exhibit. Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Piersbacher.
Good morning.
At the time of Ms. Mullis's death, you had been an EMT or volunteer firefighter for about 20 years. Is that fair to say?
Just shy of that, yes.
And since then, obviously, you are still a volunteer.
Correct.
On the day in question, you were dispatched around 11 minutes after noon, right?
Yes.
And you arrived somewhere around 12:14, 3 minutes later.
Yes.
According to your report, which has now been admitted as Exhibit 216, you reached Ms. Mullis or Amy Mullis for an assessment at 12:15, right?
I believe if that's what it says in the report, then yes.
And the Lucas device that you explained earlier was placed a minute later.
Yes, if that's what it says.
And at that time, you left Ms. Mullis's body, ceased compressions, and went back to the ambulance, right?
I did because compressions were being taken over by the Lucas device.
So you didn't visualize her during that period of time.
I did not.
And you didn't administer the AED shock at 12:17 either, did you?
Whoever was running the AED did at that point. That's the time that it was shocked.
And I believe if we turn to directing your attention to what is page 4 of Exhibit 216, I believe it references that David Kirschbacher was the one who placed that AED shock, right?
That is possible. Yeah, I don't have that page in front of me, but if that's what it says, then that's what happened.
And 1 minute later, Manchester Ambulance took over the care
Yes.
of and administered the life-saving efforts for Ms. Mullis, right?
Yes, once they arrived, yes.
So the entirety of your interaction spanned about 3 minutes.
Probably, yes.
And for the portion of those 3 minutes, you weren't actually with Ms. Mullis the whole time, were you?
Not the entire time, no.
And according to your report, as has already been admitted, you didn't see the injuries in question, right?
I did not.
And you didn't observe the full extent of any puncture wounds, right?
I did not.
You don't document any direct references to Todd Mullis in your report, do you?
No.
You never once reference Tristan Mullis in your report, right?
Correct.
And you were familiar with them, as you mentioned, right? Because your focus was actually on Amy Mullis and preventing her or administering life-saving care.
Correct.
So what we do know from your report is that you'd agree that she had bruising documented to her face.
Yes.
And you didn't actually note anything about her hands in question, correct?
No.
In fact, based upon your examination, you had no reason to check her hands, fair?
We did not.
So you can't say whether or not she had any injuries to her hands, right?
That is correct.
Nor could you say that she has any injuries to her legs or feet, right?
No. Those, that was removed by Manchester Ambulance. They cut the rest of her clothing off of her when they took over care, so that's why that is not in my report, because that was under their care.
So directing to your specific interactions with Amy Mullis on this day, you administered manual compressions.
I did.
And you placed the King airway device, right?
I did.
Tube. How long or how many tubes have you placed, would you say?
Over the years.
Can we get a little, I'm sorry, objection, a little foundation as to like a time period? Are you talking the entire 20 years or?
Sure.
So this fancy corn maze is some kind of newfangled post-conviction relief. Is this the Socialist Republic of Denmark or the US? I will have you know we have lower business taxes in Denmark than you have in the US. Socialist, smocialist country. But yes, it is a post-conviction relief. That's the word I've been looking for the entire stream. Thank you for reminding me, Brandon. And the super chat.
In a general sense, without holding you to any specific number, over your 20 years' time at that point, how many airway devices had you placed? How many tubes?
At that point, well, those were relatively new at the time. I mean, we haven't had those in the entire 20 years that I had been in EMT, but I have placed a dozen.
So you were fairly experienced or aware of how to place them?
Yes.
And to be fair, those don't come into contact with a patient's lips or anything like that specifically, right?
No, mostly it's my hand that comes in contact with her face or her lips as I'm moving her face out of the way to put the tube in.
And in this instance, Manchester Ambulance is the one who was doing the suctioning, not you,
Yes,
right?
that is correct.
So you weren't applying any force with an outside suction, right?
No.
And do you recall or have any reason to believe you caused an injury to her lips yourself?
No.
And generally, when you place a King airway tube specifically, do you cause injuries to the patients you place them or administer them to?
I have not heard of that.
And in your instance, that hasn't happened, right?
No, not that I'm aware of.
So you don't.
I don't think they gave her ketamine. She was intubated, and it's because she has an injury to her lip. The defense tried to say that could have happened during the intubation.
Don't have any reason to believe that you would have caused any damage to Amy Mullis's face or mouth or otherwise, right?
No,
And you didn't ride with her to the hospital either, did you?
I did not.
So your care or interactions with Amy Mullis ended at 12:18 or so.
Yes, whatever time she was loaded in the ambulance, that's when my interaction with her stopped.
And so your total interaction with Amy Mullis would have been 3 minutes, right?
Probably, yes.
In your report, you don't call it a farming accident, though, do you?
What did I reference it as? What did I put in my narrative?
I believe when you were dispatched, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that, like you said earlier, you believe that a woman had been hit by forks, right?
Yes, that's what it was dispatched as.
You don't mention a forklift, though, do you?
No.
And you don't mention any bale spears, right?
Nope.
So overall, you had no reason to believe or any reason to look into the cause of Ms. Mullis's injuries, did you?
Just to ask what had happened, and again was told we weren't sure. We thought we were maybe dealing with a fall, was the answer that we got on scene.
Is it safe to say that the family members who are noted in your report, that would be Todd Mullis?
Yes, I believe I just referenced family members in general, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it would have been reported as an unknown incident to you, right?
Yes.
So it wasn't referenced as an accident by Mr. Mullis. Fair?
No.
I'm going to object at that point as asked and answered and beyond this witness's testimony.
Yeah, but it's not a, as I didn't watch the first trial, I only read about it, and it only seems like it's something with one of her lips. So I think they tried to imply she got a little help falling over.
Yeah, and I
To
don't
remain in the record.
think that's true.
That was it, yes?
Sorry, could you please re-ask the question?
So Mr. Mullis had never referred to it as an accident or otherwise to you, right?
No, it was very confusing. We were trying to figure out what had happened. As you said, the 3 minutes that I was with her, we were trying to see if we could resuscitate her. So that was our primary cause. In my mind, I was running over what could have happened, but our primary focus was to get her back, get a heartbeat and breathing.
So your job wasn't to look into what caused the
No.
incident in question?
We asked the questions to help us figure out what we're dealing with. But in this case, it was very confusing. Nobody really knew. So we focused just on what we could see and took care of that.
So we've referenced your report extensively, which has now been admitted as Exhibit 216. Who do you submit that report to?
I believe it goes to the Iowa Department of Health.
So it doesn't go to any specific agency for inclusion, right?
No, it gets uploaded to the state.
And I believe you've previously referenced the National Emergency Medical Services Information System? Mm-hmm. Fair?
Yes.
Is that also called NEMSIS?
Yes.
And for NEMSIS, do you know who that goes to?
I do not.
So is it safe to say
Jamie, this is the worst comb over I've seen in a long time. This poor guy, he's what, 30? Just let it go, fella. Just do the lally thing and say goodbye to it. Or do the monk thing and just get rid of the top.
Some guys can't do it.
But comb overs are worse than just trimming it off because you can see the comb over.
that you've never in your 25 years checked into where that goes, right?
No. I do know that when our service gets inspected every 3 years by the state, the Iowa Department of Public Health comes out and they do have access to all of those reports, and they have all of our information on when reports were filed and in what a timely manner, and that is checked into them. So I do know that at that point, the Iowa Department of Public Health Emergency Services Agency, who keeps track of the EMS services, they have those reports.
And so those reports don't actually go to anyone other than the state agency designated to receive them, right?
As far as I know.
Is it because he has gray stripes, or is it his scalp we can see through his hair? I think it's his scalp. Do the Dave thing and just bust down the sides and admit that you got the, as we say, the white landing strip on top. It doesn't work. Jamie, even you wouldn't find this fella attractive.
Well, I don't in general. So.
No, but you always oh, I like a good Midwestern man who's especially if he's in law enforcement.
No, I'm good.
And in that case, the NEMSIS program is actually administered at the federal level. Fair?
I believe so.
So that data is not being aggregated by, say, the hospital in Delaware County.
I don't know.
You have never provided the report specifically to a hospital in Delaware County, right?
Not that final report. No.
Did you provide any other version of a report to a healthcare provider in this case?
Yes.
And so that would be documented in the medical records or referenced otherwise?
It should be in Manchester's report that they received ours. What we usually do is when we get on scene, we don't pull out our computers and do the final report there. We have handwritten notes and we pull off the top sheet and it goes with the patient. So in this case, when we handed off the patient to Manchester, our top sheet of notes went with her, with Manchester, to become part of their report.
And that's because it was Manchester who was in charge of her transport to the hospital?
Because they transported her, yes.
And in charge of handing over care to the hospital emergency room?
Correct.
So that wasn't you in this
We
case.
did not hand her over to the emergency room. No, we did not. We handed her over to Manchester Ambulance Service.
But on scene, you talked to Todd Mullis, correct?
Yes, well, in passing, he was in the background giving answers. I did not specifically talk to him one-on-one.
You also confirmed some of the details with the deputies, yes?
Yes,
And so in question, you were also known to the Mullis family, weren't you?
I believe so. Somewhat more so Amy and the younger two kids at that point in time.
Because you went to the same church and your family was interactive,
Yeah,
right?
yes,
So at that point, Todd Mullis and you were already familiar.
in passing, as an acquaintance.
Ultimately, it's safe to say you can't actually explain the full extent of Amy Mullis's injuries that she sustained that day, right?
No, I cannot.
And you can't describe the extent of the location of where her injuries were seen.
No,
And your report would only document the injuries that would already be noted in her medical records or by other care staff, right?
Objection beyond the scope of this witness's knowledge. There's been no foundation laid that she's ever seen medical records from a hospital related to Ms. Mullis.
Kelly, can you read me the question? I'm sorry.
No, I was not, never that 90s, but remember back in the 90s, I was blonde and I had the bowl cut.
The report would only document the injuries that would already be noted in the medical records or by other care staff, right?
This lady's husband is dead.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I'm
Do you mind
happy to
asking
rephrase,
one?
Your Honor.
Right, thank you.
You mentioned earlier that the extent of the injuries would have gone to a Manchester ambulance, right?
correct.
And that Manchester ambulance would have provided that information also to the hospital, correct?
Yes, they should have. Yes, I assume they did.
And that's because they ultimately transferred care to the emergency room, right?
Correct.
So the bruising on Amy Mullis's face or the puncture wounds to her body or any other documented injuries would primarily be noted by her medical records or by that staff. Is that fair?
Possibly.
Because you would have provided or noted the same injuries that were noted by Manchester ambulance, right?
No,
Yep.
objection, Your Honor. I think the question is asking this witness to say what Manchester paramedics did or what's in the Manchester reports, which she has not seen, or nor did she write. So this is an improper question and ask for speculation.
Sustained.
After you responded for those and provided those 3 minutes or so of care, did you have any other interaction with Amy Mullis?
No.
You did not provide the report to any law enforcement, correct?
No.
And you normally would not provide those reports to law enforcement,
Not
right?
unless asked.
I don't have anything further, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Very briefly, Your Honor. Ms. Pierce-Bacher, law enforcement knew you were on the scene.
Correct.
You have been a member of the Delaware County community your entire life.
Correct.
Law enforcement spoke with you while you were providing care.
Yes.
Is it a normal protocol and or is it required by the Department of Public Health that you complete and submit a report?
Yes.
That's getting a little...
Do you have any obligation to send that report out to the law enforcement you interacted with?
No.
And you mentioned that you would have taken the top sheet of your notes and sent them with the patient. When you describe that, are you describing like a carbon copy where you also kept a copy of
Yes.
those notes? And we talked a little bit earlier about you submitted this report, but it included observations and actions of the other two EMTs from Greeley.
Yes.
Okay. And is that normal protocol for an EMS EMT report?
Yes.
And you were asked about your entire interaction with Ms. Mullis only being about 3 minutes. Is that unusual?
No.
You were asked a little bit about,
I don't know, but most likely his son is an adult now. He should be 18 years old. Dad's in prison. It's a chance to see him, so could be why they're there.
the dispatch and the farming records. And I believe you
From what I
testified, so I
know,
just
the
want to clarify
family's
that.
supporting him,
You
so-
heard over.
Sorry?
And I said, from what I know, the family supports him and doesn't believe he did it. So.
Yeah.
Your pager over the radio, and dispatch was calling it a tractor, baling, fork type of accident.
Yes.
And you and Dave responded from Greeley in part because Manchester was not responding fast enough or could not find the patient. Is that your understanding?
Yes, there was confusion on where exactly the patient was located and how long it would take Manchester to reach them.
Ms. Pierce-Parker, you heard us talk a little bit about your affidavit. Is there anything in your affidavit that you feel is not accurate or reflective of your experience on November 10th?
No.
Objection relevance, Your Honor. This affidavit's already been excluded.
The objection's overruled. The answer will remain in the record.
Did you ever talk to anybody from the state medical examiner's office about Amy Mullis's death?
No.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Any recross?
None needed, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down.
Thank you.
I like the judge
Let's
too.
go ahead and take a morning recess for about 15 minutes. I'll see you back then.
Morning resets. It's 11:18. This is Central Time, so it's gonna be a late dinner tonight. But so far, nothing really about this witness that I can see could change much in this case. But what do I know? But I like how it's going. It seems like there's some things that the state really want to keep out of it, but that's not that surprising that they, of course, want to do the best to keep their side of the story the same. But we haven't really touched upon, because she didn't notice the injuries really, and she was just doing CPR. She had the vomit. I don't know if that is to imply that she had some kind of seizure before she fell. Maybe they want to use it for that.
I mean, if you get impaled, it might cause you to. You know.
I don't know how much you vomit when you get impaled. I haven't been impaled that often.
I haven't either, and I don't really know anybody that happens to on a daily basis, so I have no idea.
So I don't know. But this witness never talked to anyone, even though she was one of the first people at the scene who helped doing the CPR. That's weird.
I find it weird that nobody talked to her, you know, like they
Yeah.
didn't really want to know anything. It's a
That's,
little bitch.
It's hard to see. Well, they claim his defense admitted to things that he didn't admit to in the first trial, but what, if any, does that mean? That's
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
think we need a
mean,
few more witnesses to kind of tie it together and say, well, this is the way we are going.
well, especially if they get the kid back up there to really
Yeah.
get to hammer him. 'Cause I think his timeline of things, like the state got it all wrong and implied some things. And I don't know, like from what now that it's like coming back to me, from I remember his defense was terrible.
Yeah, I didn't watch it, so I don't know. But I read the ruling from the appeal court, and they didn't seem to find anything wrong with it. So I don't know how this judge will find. Sorry. She wasn't the judge on the first trial, so I don't know if in which way she'll rule. But interesting case so far. I'm just glad it's not the same as the other case that's going right now, because that looks absolutely horrid.
Yeah, I have no interest in that whatsoever.
Oh. I'm a pitcher, not a catcher. Because she had just had surgery the day before, or a few days before, whatever. She was recovering from surgery at the point. Oh, interesting. I don't. Todd Mullis. If we look at this one, it says, it was a fall day in 2018 when Amy Mullis was found grievously injured on her family farm in Earlville, Iowa. She was face down with a cord rake sticking out of her back. That's weird. The farm tool had 4 steel tins, but doctors who examined her found 6 puncture wounds. Police started investigating her husband after learning she was considering leaving him. However, Mullis had an alibi, their 13-year-old son. The investigation revealed what had appeared to be a good marriage was actually one fractured by Amy's affairs. A divorce could have split the family apart and might have meant the loss of the farm, which was worth millions. Everyone knew Amy Mullis, says Dina Neshevivat, I don't know, a legal expert hired by 48 Hours to look at the defense case. You know, she was very bubbly, outgoing. All of a sudden, one day, she's dead. So what happened? This is not a long distance pew-pewing, said Matthew Troiano, a legal expert hired by 48 Hours to look at the prosecution's case. This is up close and personal. Why am I yawning? I don't know why. Todd Mullis told investigators that he didn't know what happened and that he assumed she fell on the corn rake. His son told police he was with his father working in the hog barn when Amy was injured, but the number of puncture wounds combined with the couple's marital problems led investigators to think otherwise. Todd Mullis was arrested and charged with Amy's murder. At trial, would Tristan's testimony save his father? In September of 2019, almost a year after her unaliving, family and friends packed the Dubeku, I don't know, Dubeku, WQ. Someone will write in, and someone else will write in a different way in 2 seconds. Dubuku. It's Dubuku. Country Courthouse, as lead prosecutor Maureen Hughes described what she says happened to the woman they knew so well. She was a young, beautiful woman, 39 years old. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, and a mother to her 3 young children. Amy had so much life left to live, but that life was viciously taken from her on November 10th, taken in the hand of this defendant. Amy's husband, Todd Mullis, a hardworking farmer who many saw as a devoted father to Tristan, Taylor, and Wyatt, was on the trial for first-degree unaliving. This brutal, senseless murder happened in a town called Earlville. Amy was found in a red shed on the family's hog farm by her 13-year-old son, Tristan. She was face down with a corn rake sticking out her back. Amy Mullis was visually and deliberately red-rummed. From the start of the trial, covered by Court TV, Todd Mullis' attorney general Feuerhelm, which means fire helm, agreed with prosecutors that Amy had been unalive, but argued it wasn't Todd who killed him. Well, then it's hard to claim it's an accident if your defense team says.
Well, yeah, like that's so. Did he say that it must have been somebody else? I mean,
I
like
believe that you will
so-
find that there's a reasonable doubt about Miss Mullis' guilt, is what he said. Mr. Gerald Fire Helmet.
I don't know. Maybe that's what they're talking about like they were trying to make some defense that Todd didn't like agree to.
Yeah. There's no way that Todd could have unalived Amy. He did not have the opportunity. 48 Hours hired legal expert Daniel and Dina. I don't know why I started yawning. Jamie, take the rest of the show. I'm going to bed.
No, thank you.
I don't normally yawn like this. Took a look at the evidence from the defense point of view and Matthew Troiano to look at the prosecution's perspective. This is not a random third party. This is not a long distance pew-pewing. This is close and personal, as serious and brutal and violent as it comes. Maureen Hughes, doctor, did you know Amy Mullis? Dr. Craig Thompson. I knew her as a nurse in the emergency department. Craig Thompson was on duty that day. Amy was rushed to the hospital in Manchester, Iowa, where she once worked as a nurse. Shortly after arrival at the hospital, I understood that Amy Mullis had been pronounced dead. The first thing Thompson, a medical director of emergency services, was told Amy's death was a freak accident. Amy had been injured falling on a corn rake that was upended. Thompson is also a medical examiner, and he needed to make sure her injuries matched that story. Did you notice any or observe any injuries on Amy? Well, notably, she had 6 puncture wounds across the back. This is the rake. I found it very difficult to see how 4 tins could cause 6 holes in a single impact. Literally, the math doesn't add up. Yeah, it's basic math. We have a problem here. Dr. Krause, did you perform an autopsy on Amy Mullis? I did. Thompson contacted Dr. Kelly Krause, a forensic pathologist for the state medical examiner's office. Dr. Kelly Krause, so she has a small abrasion or a scrape in the middle of her upper lip. Krause found blunt force injuries to Amy's face, hands, and knees, possible evidence of a struggle.
If you fall, no. That could totally happen if you just fell.
Yeah. This is a photo of the corn rake that was brought to the autopsy suite. There were 2 different directions of the 6 puncture wounds. And what do those different... I don't know what's happening.
Wake up.
I don't know what's... I'll need to go get an energy drink or something. And what do those different directions indicate to you? To me, they indicate that she would have to be impaled with the rake at least twice, possibly 3 times, which meant the Delaware County Sheriff's Office now had an unaliving to solve.
Yeah, like it could definitely be like her trying to roll off of it or something.
I don't know. It looks like it's pretty. It's gonna go in deep.
Maybe, yeah, and maybe it didn't like she didn't just go unconscious right away. She could have been trying to get off of it.
I think it's a hard one to get off if it puncture anything.
Well, you never know.
Why did they just cut the feet? Do we have anything? So she was in this barn. I don't know why we're seeing kittens. It was dark by the time Deputy Travis Hemmersath arrived at the farm. I went immediately to the red shed, and there was a couple of drops of blood on the floor, and that's where it was described to me that that's where she was positioned. I looked at all the equipment there for any other indication, such as blood markings that would indicate an injury where she had fallen anywhere else but where she was located. And did you observe anything? I did not. He noticed a few drops.
How small was the building too? Because to have to go in there and impale someone, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways.
He noticed a few drops of blood, and with his own eyes couldn't notice anything else, and had concluded the investigation at the red shed. Daniel and Dina Neshevit wonder whether Amy's death was even an unaliving. If this was an unaliving and someone was stabulating Amy, not 1, not 2, but 3 times, you're gonna see blood drops on the chemical totes, on the shed smalls, on a suspect. You're gonna see it on Amy, and none of that was found. The Delaware County Sheriff's Office doesn't investigate many homicides. Amy's was only the 4th in the last 10 years, so they asked for help from Iowa's Division of Criminal Investigation. Deputies began digging into Mullis's marriage. They discovered Amy had cheated on Todd 5 years earlier. Amy crossed the foundation of their marriage, the trust of their marriage, by having an affair. Come on now. Amy and Todd decided to try to work it out. They went to counseling. Amy quit her job at the hospital to work on the farm. Todd said she wanted to spend more time with her family, but Amy told friends she had no choice. She left because it was kind of a deal she made with her husband. The terms of the deal is that, Amy, you're done in the hospital, you're back on the farm, I'm keeping my eye on you. Yeah, and Todd's position is she signed up for that, right? We agreed that this was going to be the way it was going to go. It took Todd a very long time. I don't think he ever really trusted Amy again. In fact, she told Terry Stainer she felt like a prisoner. It was very regulated who she could do things with. It was kind of a joke, the approved friends list that could actually do things with Amy. She was timed when she left home and when she got back. There was a line that was used that she was a prisoner of Todd, so this is pretty intense stuff. It's controlling behavior. By 2018, Amy was confiding in friends like Patricia Christopherson that things were not going well. She wasn't happy in her marriage, and she hadn't been happy for many years. No, she was banging someone else. But Todd told a different story to John Tuppett, a special agent assistant in investigation. Were you a loving husband, would you say? Were you kind to your wife? You can ask anybody. I was, yeah. How would you describe your marriage? Pretty tight, actually, yeah. Communication was great. We were together all the time, you know. I mean, it was a good, yeah, between us, it was good. It just wasn't the whole truth. On July 18th, 5 years after Amy's affair, Todd had noticed a change in her. His radar is up. Hey, wait a minute, I've seen this movie before. Yup, and that raises a red flag. I don't know what that is. Going over phone records, Todd discovered his wife has been communicating with another man, Jerry Fresher, a field manager for the Mullins farm. Todd couldn't see their 128 texts, but Matt Troiano said when Todd confronted Frazier, he told, nothing going on, this is business stuff. We're talking about kids' activities, nothing scandalous. All those texts, they were all about kid activities and the pig farm. Correct, that's the story. Todd even called Frazier's wife. Jerry's wife convinced him everything is fine. They have a happy marriage and she had no concerns about her husband, and that puts his mind to rest. But as investigators quickly discover, Amy and Jerry Frazier were having an affair that provided what they needed, a motive for Todd to kill her. But that doesn't make sense if he didn't believe they were having an affair.
Yeah.
If he believed everything is hunky dory, why does that give him a motive? The obvious choice always is the husband, but Todd also had an airtight alibi, his son Tristan, which means as his father is tried for unaliving of his mother, Tristan will be the most important witness for both the prosecution and the defense. Everyone was on the edge of their seats of what's the son going to say. Now, Tristan, I'd like you to direct your attention to November 10th, 2018. Do you remember that day? Yes. One of the most anticipated witnesses in Todd Mullis' murder trial was Todd and Amy's now 14-year-old son, Tristan. 48 Hours has chosen not to show his face. He testifies via closed-circuit TV. Do you swear that the testimony? I don't care. Everyone knew the stakes from the first moments of the investigation. Tristan had provided an alibi for his father. Legal expert Troiano said Tristan told police, I'm with my dad. I didn't lose sight of him. I'm with my dad the whole time. He may not know it, but he's alibying his father. If they are together the whole time, then he can't be assaulting his wife and unaliving his wife. With the monitor facing the jury, Tristan spoke of the close bond he shared with his dad. We would go hunting, fishing, go on a four-wheel ride. We'd farm together, obviously. The two often worked together on the farm. On the day Amy died, the two younger kids stayed in the house while Amy joined Todd and Tristan in one of their large hog barns. Tristan, it's kind of an open barn. It's about a football field long. Tristan described the division of labor. He was setting up portable heaters, anticipating a delivery of piglets to the farm. Todd was setting up equipment that provided water to the pens. Amy was cleaning the lights. She would get on a bucket, a 5-gallon bucket, and then she would reach up to the light bulbs in the ceiling, so she would clean those out. Everything seemed fine until Tristan noticed something was off with his mom. She said she was getting dizzy. When she got on a bucket, she had to hold herself from falling off, and she got down on her legs. She was kind of shaky. Tristan was worried. 4 days earlier, Amy had undergone an outpatient medical procedure. This was her first time out of the house. I think I remember saying, are you all right? Do you need help cleaning them? And then Dad kind of asked the same thing. She just said, no, like, I'm fine. But a little while later, Amy suffered another dizzy spell, according to Tristan. Todd became concerned. He said, I really don't think it's wise for you to stay out here because, I don't want you to falling off and getting hurt. Tristan testified Todd wanted Amy to go in the house and rest, but asked if on her way she could grab a pet carrier out of the red shed some 30 yards from the front of the barn. Todd told her he would need it later to round up a litter of kittens to protect them from some heavy machinery he planned to use. He said, if you can get it to the shop, that would help, but if you just can't get it, then just leave it. We'll get it. Amy left. Tristan said he and his dad continued working together for about another hour and a half in the barn, then headed to an office at the front. That's when Todd looked out the window and saw the pet carrier wasn't where he asked Amy to put it. So he just told me to get it myself. He asked you to go to the red shed to check on your mom. He asked to go check on her because, maybe we thought that she was still struggling to get the pet cage, or maybe she just went in the house, so he just said, go check on mom. But he didn't. He told you to go to the red shed. Yes. When Tristan got to the red shed, he made
That's
a
where it was at.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds kind of like they're planting testimony.
Say he told you where to go.
She was kind of on her hands and knees face down. Did you see anything that's protruding and sticking out of your mom's body? Yes. What did you see? A corn rake. What did you do? I checked for a pulse on her neck and her arm. I just kind of freaked out. My anxiety level went from 0 to 100 in about a split second. Tristan screamed for his dad. Todd arrived, saw Amy, and told Tristan to get the family truck. And what was your dad doing? He was helping mom out of the barn. This is a very confined space.
Wow. Yeah. For me, it seems pretty simple. If you get caught and fall,
Yeah.
how easy it could be to do something like that.
But also, if you're in there swinging it a couple of times, 2 to 3 times,
Tough.
yeah, that would be blood on all these chemical things.
Yeah, where exactly? I don't know.
Because the opening inside the shed was so narrow, Todd would later tell police he had to remove the corn rake from Amy's back in order to get her out. Todd then picked her up and carried her to the truck. Tristan gets into the passenger seat. Todd puts Amy essentially on top of Tristan and drives. Can you imagine the trauma? I don't care. This is just filling up. Tristan described to the jury that as they raced towards the 911 hospital, Todd dialed 911. I'm headed there. I'm about to Oneida. Okay, so you're headed to where? Okay, what's the hospital? I just grabbed her and I threw her in the truck. He's frantic. He's excited. When he's on the phone with 911, the dispatcher say, can you pull over? And so he pulls over on the side of the road. So again,
You look poised maybe to get a witness. Okay.
We are going to call Dr. Cruz, Your Honor. One thing we neglected to do earlier this morning, which we should have done, is to give the court the file of all of our exhibits, Your Honor.
Right, thank you. Good morning, Dr. Cruz. You've been called as a witness. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be true and correct? Yes. Go ahead and have a seat, please.
so I don't know. I was just reading a recap of what seems to be a television program. But yeah, seems like there's a lot of reasonable doubt in there.
Yeah, and exactly, Farrell. Like,
Yeah,
if she had some
it was
surgery and she's doing too much, and the boy's already saying she was dizzy, and it tests that,
yeah, and at no time did it seem like the dad left him. So because again, going from the hog pen to the house, bang, 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 2-3 times, going back, not get a drop of blood on you, and then wait around for some time, and then say, oh, by the way, can you go check on mom?
Yeah.
That seems, well, he was, the jury's always right, and he was found guilty.
Thompson. Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Dr. Cruz.
Good morning.
We have not met. My name is Sarah Thompson. I'm one of the attorneys for Miles in this case.
Okay.
Could you please state your full name for the record?
My name is Kelly Cruz. It's Kelly Kruse.
I may be the only person that's having to respond. I'm having a little trouble here.
Sure. And I can't see.
I'm sorry, there's no light on it, but
You hit the, yeah, perfect. Okay. And Ms. Thompson, your microphone's not on either. There we go. That may help.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, with that out of the way, Dr. Cruz, you gave testimony in Todd Mullis' criminal trial back in 2019, correct?
correct.
And at that trial, you testified about the autopsy that you performed on Ms. Amy Mullis back in 2018, right?
Correct.
And you prepared a report based on the autopsy that you conducted?
Correct.
In your trial testimony at Todd's criminal trial, you gave your opinions about the cause and the manner of Ms. Mullis' death?
Correct.
And at that proceeding, you testified that the manner of her death was a homicide?
Correct.
And you testified that it was your opinion that someone struck her with a corn rake and that killed her?
I testify that she had injuries that would be consistent with those caused by the corn rake.
Was someone striking her with the corn rake and that causing her death?
Correct.
Those are opinions that you maintain today, Dr. Cruz, is that right?
Correct.
And you're not here at these proceedings to offer different opinions than the opinions that you've already given in your prior report and your prior testimony?
Correct.
You reached your opinions about the cause and the manner of Ms. Mullis' death at the autopsy that you performed on November 12th of 2018. Is that right?
Yes.
And you based your conclusions about the cause and the manner of her death on what you learned at that autopsy, right?
Yes.
Is there any disagreement in your mind or any confusion in your mind that Ms. Mullis was found with something called a corn rake that had been impaled in her back and her side?
That's information that has been consistent, so I don't have any reason to not believe that.
And it's also your understanding that after that occurred, that she was rushed to the hospital, right?
Yes.
And that it was her husband, Todd, and her son, Tristan, who took her to the hospital?
That's what I've been told, yes.
And it's your understanding that they got partway down the road to the hospital when they were met by emergency medical services, people who performed resuscitative efforts on Ms. Mullis?
Yes.
And then it's those EMTs that then took Ms. Mullis to the hospital?
Yes.
And she died at the hospital at 1:08 a.m.?
I'd have to check the time.
And sorry, I misspoke. She died at the hospital at 1:08 p.m., correct?
I would still like to check the time, but she died at the hospital.
Well, she died at the hospital.
Correct.
After she passed at the hospital, the medical examiner that was covering Delaware County at that time, Dr. Craig Thompson, he called your office?
Yes.
And he told you that he was sending Ms. Mullis's body to your office for an autopsy?
Judge, I'm not objecting. These questions are all leading.
They are. Yes, I appreciate Ms. Thompson moving things along, if that's her intention in using leading questions. But since there's been an objection, if you could rephrase and avoid using the leading questions.
Your Honor, this was the subject of the pretrial motion that the applicant filed, and I do want to be heard on this issue. We filed a pretrial motion about this exact issue. We can take it up at sidebar or with the witness, but we filed a motion about this issue.
Okay. Did you want to take it up in a sidebar or just take it up on the record? Obviously, I assume you're referring to the issue of this witness being taken out of order?
I'm not, Your Honor.
Oh.
Yes, and I apologize because I truly thought this issue was resolved.
Okay. I guess I'll leave it up to you if you'd prefer to take it up in a sidebar or just on the record now.
I don't think it impacts the content of the witness's testimony, so I'm fine for the witness to remain.
Okay.
The motion that we filed addressed a couple of issues. One, that this witness is an agent of the state, and as such, under the rules, I'm allowed to cross-examine her because she's not a hostile person with respect to the witness, but she's hostile for purposes of the rules. This is also relevant to the burden that Mr. Mullis has to prove at this hearing about what her testimony, what the trial would have been like with additional information. And she would have been the state's witness at trial, and she would have been cross-examined by trial counsel. So a cross-examination is appropriate regardless of who is proffering the witness. We certainly are proffering this witness. But the issue of her being an agent of the state alone makes it appropriate for me to lead her.
Any response, Mr.
Judge,
Brown?
this is a witness they're calling regardless of what her position was at the previous trial. These are leading questions. Developing an issue and asking leading questions in some respect is fine. But we're going to be getting into other details relating to Dr. Cruz's opinion. They're calling her as a witness. I think they should be made to follow the rules of evidence, so that's why we're objecting.
Yeah, this is a different situation. I don't think there's been an issue of establishing Dr. Cruz as a hostile witness in any sense.
Well, that just fell off the wall.
You know, as far as her being an agent of the state, you know, counsel, if you want to lay some foundation to establish, again, that agency relationship, something that would support or demonstrate a rationale for treating her as a hostile witness, you may do so. But for now, let's proceed as if she's your witness.
Your Honor, I'd like to lay some foundation for this issue, but it was my understanding that this was addressed in our motion and that this had been ruled upon. So I don't want to, this is an important issue for us, and that's why we briefed this issue and cited law and cited the statute, which says that a witness that's identified with an adverse party may be treated as hostile. And again, it's not about, obviously, Dr. Cruz's conduct on the stand, but her identity as the person that she is. I'll ask some questions on this topic, but this is an issue that for Mr. Mullis is important, and that's why we filed the motion that we filed. And we also discussed this at the pretrial conference, Your Honor, which is why, again, I apologize. When we addressed the issue of how the witnesses were going to proceed, it was my understanding this issue had been resolved.
Certainly. And I understand that there was discussion about calling witnesses out of order. And I think that there was.
Yeah, but if the wife was banging someone else and telling all her friends, I really want out of this marriage, but he contacted the banger and the banger's wife and didn't believe they were having an affair, then because he didn't see the 128 texts they had between them, he only saw that they were in communications. Then the motive that he knew about an affair he didn't know about seems. And again, if you're unaliving someone, why rush them to the hospital? Just leave them in the barn. Tell your kid, no, we have to get this barn done. We're gonna stay out here all day. And then, oh, by the way, where's mom? I don't know.
Clarity in that regard. I don't recall a specific discussion about this particular issue. And I certainly could be wrong. Counsel, maybe you want to chime in here.
If I may, Your Honor. Certainly, Rule 5.611 sub C for leading questions would not permit them normally on direct examination. And we have hotly contested, I believe, as the court knows, whether or not Dr. Cruz is in fact an agent of the state, because the state for this purposes under Iowa's PCR Act is the Attorney General's office and the criminal justice section. Most of the witnesses, if not all of them, would have been in their concept then a hostile witness and would fall under too broad a scope. Certainly, Dr. Cruz has been openly answering the questions and trying to be responsive to them. And certainly there should be no reason to believe she's hostile yet. Now, should a finding of hostility be found later on, then maybe this could change, but the court has no reason to grant that right now, as she is not associated or called by us at this point in time, and the court's pretrial ruling was not in reference to this as it related to the pretrial motions. So the state would resist that finding.
Your Honor, our motion on this topic is at D0290.
Did you say 290?
Is that correct? Yeah,
From-
D0290.
From 20. That's the motion to admit deposition testimony, yes?
It addresses other topics as well, which includes being able to lead this witness.
Yeah, but then there's the lack of spray from Could there be, I don't know. I didn't watch the first trial. I'm just reading the stuff I just read, and I'm thinking, could there be a different explanation? Did she try to get up and fall back on it? Was it 6 distinct puncture wounds, or well, we have to listen. I had Braunschweiger on toast and vanilla buttercream cupcake. How Midwest of me. Braunschweiger is Brunsviger in Danish and is a birthday cake. I made it once twice on the show. You don't put it on toast. It's a cake. Yikes.
And Your Honor, again, I don't believe that the court ruled on that, and that wasn't pertinent to this at this point in time either.
No, it was a corn rake, so it only had 4 prongs, and she allegedly had 6 stabulation wounds, but I don't know. I haven't seen the autopsy photo, so I don't know anything.
Since it is just about noon, I think probably the prudent thing to do is take our lunch recess. We will excuse the witness for now. We'll pick up any additional argument on this issue that we need to over the noon hour, and then pick back up with the witness's testimony once it's been resolved and everybody knows where things stand. Dr. Cruz, you may step down. Let's plan on resuming at 1:15. Counsel, if you can, well, why don't we take care of this right now? If that works for you?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Thompson, any additional argument that you would like to make?
Well, 2 things, Your Honor. One is, Rule 5.611 is very clear that the issue about leading questions is not just about, I mean, we all understand the classic witness who isn't cooperating in the exam, but that's not what Rule 5.611 speaks to. It speaks to, and literally says, the court should allow leading questions when a party calls a witness identified with an adverse party. And that is also, as we cited in our motion, what Iowa Code 624.1 says, which allows parties to call agents of public corporations and to treat them as, they are a representative of the adverse party. And we can lay some foundation for this, but it's really undisputed that this witness is an employee of the state of Iowa. There is evidence in the record that she was being advised by Scott Brown as to her conduct in the pre-trial litigation of this post-conviction matter, taking advice and direction from the Attorney General's office about how to respond to the issues in this case. There's no question that she's identified with an adverse party. And so it's not about whether she responds to the questions in an appropriate way. It's simply that she is a person who is associated with an adverse party by the plain text of the rule and by the statute. And that is why we are allowed to cross her, Your Honor.
So just one more thing on this, and then I'll be done, if I may.
Go ahead.
So I'm well aware of the rule that is cited by counsel. But just because she is a state of Iowa employee, or that she may have been called as a witness by the state, does not substantiate the claim that she is somehow identified with us. The medical examiner goes to great lengths to remain neutral in their opinions. She is not employed by the Attorney General's office. They are completely separate. I would go back a little bit of a history lesson in that the ME's office used to be part of the Department of Public Safety, and they were moved out of the Department of Public Safety into to Health and Human Services, formerly the Department of Public Health, for that reason, so that they can maintain their neutrality. She gave an opinion that we utilized at trial. They don't like it, and that's fine. But that does not mean that this rule has been, that the terms of this rule would allow them to ask the leading questions in the manner that counsel is claiming she can ask leading questions.
May I make one more point of record, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
I mean, the offer of proof that we'll make, which we can elicit from this witness on the stand, is that shortly before Mr. Mullis filed his post-conviction pleading in this case, my colleague, Ms. Neshawat, wrote a letter to the medical examiner's office directed to this witness, giving this witness information about new material in this case and asking to speak with this witness. And the records that we have reflect that this witness consulted with the Attorney General's office, consulted actually with counsel to my left, and from that conversation determined that it would be inappropriate to speak with Mr. Mullis's counsel, and so she did not. And that reflects that she's taking legal advice or, direction in this case from literally the attorney sitting to my left. She did not communicate with us. She is not a neutral party in this litigation. And she remains an employee of the state of Iowa, whose office is in the same building as the Department of Public Safety, who is an employee of the state of Iowa, whose work in this case was in the context as an employee of the state of Iowa. So that's exactly what this rule talks about. And the last thing I'll say about this, Your Honor, is were she not a person who could take legal advice and direction from Mr. Brown, and I do not say this to impugn Mr. Brown at all, it's inappropriate for an attorney in litigation under the rules of professional responsibility to advise a neutral witness not to speak with a party. That is one of the core rules of our profession, is that I cannot tell a witness, don't talk to the other side. The only way that it would be even appropriate for an attorney to do that is if that person can give that person legal advice because they are associated. And I certainly don't accuse Mr. Brown of having done anything improper. But the reason it was not improper for him to tell this witness not to speak to us is because they had a legal relationship. And so she's clearly identified with that party. If she wasn't, then there would be another issue that we'd be raising here in terms of professional responsibility, and we're not.
At this time, the state is not planning on calling her as a witness. Is that correct?
Your Honor, Dr. Cruz is listed as the state's expert witness and would be handled at the same time. To my knowledge, that would go to the court's pretrial ruling as it relates to the breadth of the testimony. I guess on the point of the breadth of this objection is, one, citing the rules of professional conduct in this aspect would seek to wrongly impugn an attorney's testimony here or an attorney's questioning here. There hasn't been, I believe, proof provided in this case, and perhaps I'd love to see it, that would suggest that there was some sort of impropriety. But beyond that, the deposition testimony that they sought to admit into the record already and sought stipulation to, for instance, regarding Dr. Cruz, they were, Mr. Mullis's counsel was completely comfortable asking open-ended questions there, and this sort of accusation would predate that. Again, we have extensively included in motions and resistances what the state means as a party here in this case, and this is just wasting the efforts. They certainly could ask about that in an open-fashioned way. Before this case proceeded, were you contacted by Mr. Mullis's counsel with new evidence? That can all speak to what Dr. Cruz did, but it certainly isn't shaping the lead purpose or why leading questions should be permitted here. And that is just too broad and too improper, Your Honor.
I think there's a lot of reasonable doubt in this case.
Obviously, this isn't as black and white as it normally is because this is a PCR. And there's already been the underlying criminal trial where some of these people have already testified as witnesses for the state. It's also not as black and white as it normally is because some of these people are employees of the state, albeit in different offices. And some of them have no other place to turn for questions than the AG's office. Looking not just at Dr. Cruz, but at the list of names that are included in the motion that was filed on February 3rd.
No, you were hearing things. She said it's not as it normally is because there have been a criminal case and this is a PCR case. And it is government workers, so of course they'll talk to government entities.
Well, I said it also.
Obviously, I assume there are some different arguments for some of these other people, but specifically with regard to Dr. Cruz, the responsibilities of the state medical examiner are dictated and directed by statute and rule. They're not controlled by or directed by the Office of the Attorney General. In the absence of some foundation or finding that the state in this matter was directing Dr. Cruz's investigation or autopsy, I don't think she falls under this rule. So I'm not going to allow leading at this point. And I think generally speaking, it's probably going to be the same with regard to the rest of these individuals. I am assuming that similarly, there probably has been communication between these individuals and counsel at various points, but they are from different agencies. And you're free, obviously, to make whatever arguments you need to individually, whatever record you wish, either now or when we get there, but that's where things stand for now.
I understand the court's ruling. I think, and again, we truly believed, and I say this only because I apologize for this coming up now, because it was truly the belief of every attorney for Mr. Mullis that this had been resolved at the pretrial conference, and that the reason we were agreeing to call her today was because we were going to be able to call her in our case and lead her. I understand the court's ruling. Respectfully, we disagree, but that's why we called her now. And I do think we need to confer briefly about what this means for us, because the appropriate examination for her, in our view, is this one. And if this isn't the examination the court is going to allow us to have, I think we need to decide whether we're going to have the state call her. So we need to make a determination about that, Your Honor.
Okay, certainly. And we can, as I said, we'll take our lunch break at this time and plan on resuming at 1:15, and I'll be in chambers, so if there's anything that we need to talk about with regard to the schedule, you know where to find me.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
Your Honor, there's only one more issue that might be helpful
Sure.
to address before, while there's no witness on the stand. So just this morning, we were given a demonstrative exhibits for a witness that was initially.
He's just as, I think he should just let it go. He looks like Lefty.
List identified earlier this morning that Mr. Mullis's counsel intended to call. These are demonstratives that were, to my knowledge, never provided to the state. 11 months ago, I believe, the state did discovery requests, as the court knows, specifically requesting copies of any demonstrative aids intended to be used by Mr. Mullis's counsel or any of their witnesses. We received those exhibits, or demonstratives rather, at 9:42 a.m. today.
There's no jury today. This is a bench trial. This isn't a criminal trial. This is a civilian trial to see if there's enough evidence that he should have a retrial. So this has nothing to do with the first case. This is a new case to prove if he should have another bite at the apple.
It was never produced in discovery, and I know Mr. Mullis replied, because I inquired while trial was ongoing, whether these demonstratives were provided in discovery, and the response was that they
Just let it go. Let's let it go, let it go. It becomes more obvious when you do that bad comb over.
got them this morning from the witness. However, given the late disclosure of these demonstratives, I believe that it is improper, especially considering this was a subject of months of discovery in this case and has resulted in numerous other motions related to the destruction or disappearance or what have you of other demonstrative aids. So I think it is an unfairness to the state to have additional new demonstratives, including highly technical mathematical calculations in them, and we can show them to the court if that would aid in your ruling. But I believe any demonstratives that had not been produced in discovery prior to the start of trial would be improper and unfair. Thank you.
Did these demonstratives go with?
I believe it's with Dr. Hammers is the only one that we've been provided thus far.
Can I
Going
respond?
the
Your
wrong
Honor?
way.
You may.
All right, what counsel's talking about are two photographs.
yeah,
The
but
photographs are photos of Ms. Mullis from autopsy, and they have some measurements on them that are pre-marked. Those measurements come directly from Dr. Cruz's notes that are on Exhibit 380, page 3. They're her measurements. This isn't something that is calculations, it's numbers. There's numbers written on a document that that we intend to use with a witness. It's they're literally transposed from Dr. Cruz's notes. A party is entitled to, make whatever interrogatory and just document requests they want in discovery. A party can't change the court's deadlines for providing materials by, asking for discovery that would require a party to anticipate, months and months, in this case, months and months and months before trial, every piece of paper they're going to show a witness at trial. There's not any new information here. It's literally a photo with numbers from Dr. Cruz pre-written on it. That's what it is. It's not a surprise. The idea of this being related to document destruction is, at that point doesn't make any sense. That's what this is. It's a photo with numbers from Dr. Cruz written on it. And we can lay the foundation for those numbers with Dr. Cruz.
And briefly, Your Honor, just to wrap this up, certainly I wasn't implying any document destruction was related to this. However, in reference to the counsel invoked the court's pretrial deadlines on giving exhibits, just this last Saturday afternoon, a day and a half before trial, we received a new exhibit that was never exchanged and never produced in discovery. And when I requested counsel specifically provide the day and time that it had been produced in discovery, no answer was given. So we would ask that the court put an end to the continuing production of new material and exclude evidence and materials that were not provided prior to the court's pre-trial deadline, which was 21 days before trial.
If somebody could please provide me with a copy of the demonstratives so I could take a look at it quickly over lunch, I will do so and let you know what we'll do with that. We'll see you back here at 1:15. Court's in recess until then.
Your Honor.
Cool.
Well, that got a little contested in the end. Seems like my first impression that they were getting along fine didn't last all day, but it looks like at least some of the lawyers don't get along too well. But Jamie, so far, anything that we want to impart on the viewers?
No, not really. I mean, I have my thoughts about this case. It's interesting.
Yeah, but if we do what we normally do, we only react to what has been provided in court today. All the other things is out. Have we learned anything so far today that makes you think he might have been getting a raw deal.
Well, we've only had that one witness, so yeah.
Yeah, so nothing really provided that could imply anything. I think the doctor could maybe be interesting if they can get into the puncture to the upper body and the positioning. But so far, nothing has really been. No revelation have been made. Let's just say that. I just didn't get. Was she alive when the first witness arrived? I never really figured out if she was testifying to that. So she was alive when she got in the car.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because she just said that Manchester had arrived and was doing CPR. So, because again, I only read the parts I've read so far here, and just seems weird that he had a motive, but he didn't know that motive. And then he tries to take her to the hospital after unaliving her. But that's a good cover-up. I don't know anything. And as we always say, the jury's always right. 12 people did find him guilty. So,
Well,
I don't know.
I don't say that.
Jamie,
Every time
the
you
jury
say
is...
that.
Well, if you don't believe that, then you have to change your justice system, because the justice system is in America that you will be judged by a jury of your peers. That
They
jury
are
will
allowed to make
always
a
be right.
verdict, but it doesn't mean
And
that
that
I
is
agree
always
with
the
their verdict.
correct verdict. It's always the correct verdict, because that's the one that'll be on the books. Until you win an appeal, they were right. That's how the justice system works.
I get what you're saying, but I don't agree with how I feel about it.
No, you don't agree with anything I say. That's our big problem on this channel. This is a corn rake. So, as you can see, it has 4 prongs on it. And allegedly, she had 6 holes to her back. But these are massive. It looks like, well, again, this is 6 inches. So they look like they're like somewhere between 4 and 6 inches long. Getting them inside your body, that's going to be a whole heck. First of all, it's a lot of force you need to get them in, but also how deeply were they embedded in her? Because she didn't look that big, and if you're getting this rammed into your back,
If you fall on it with some force, I imagine it can do some damage.
if it's hacked into your back or you fall on it, it's gonna be. Wouldn't there be blood everywhere?
If she fell on it, I wouldn't think so. If it was a hack job, then yeah, I would think there would be splatter. Or
Yeah, but if
even
it's
on her clothes, like more over her clothes and stuff. I don't know.
But if they say if she has 6 holes in her, and again, let's just, because people are getting angry in chat or at each other, don't do that. Get angry at Jamie like I do. No matter if she got up and fell against it again and made new holes or whatever, the shed should be full with blood. Even if if it's not splattering, it should be pouring out of her. The ground should be soaked in it. Kind of like the John O'Keefe thing, where we are asking where the heck is all the blood. EMT said they came through the other side. Did she say that? I thought she said, I didn't notice any injuries, but they said she had injuries.
Well, because she had a large coat on, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to figure it out.
Yeah, she had a Carhartt on, because that's what they'd said. And that would have...
I'm sorry, Katie, but have you gotten it? And did you get? I hope you get your chocolate at some point. She had 5 to start. No. We don't know. No one has testified to that so far. That's why I'm saying with what has been produced so far in court, and I have more questions now than we started, because was she alive when the EMTs arrived? Because if I did it, I would make sure she wasn't alive and then I would rush to the hospital and say, "Oh, I tried to save her." I don't know. Yeah, and that's hopefully some of the things that will be provided, but I don't know.
Well, the biggest thing for me was what I found out, what I knew about this case when I, had watched it. The stuff was the kid. He was with the kid.
Yeah.
How would he have time for all of this?
No, but she has 2 extra wounds. According to what we have learned, she has 2 extra wounds without a rake in them, because there's 4 prongs and she has 6 wounds. So 2 of those wounds should be bleeding. I don't know. I don't know.
And the clothes was the thing too. So we'll see.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
car
we'll have to
overhead.
see. Yeah, they said she died at the hospital, but John O'Keefe didn't die till he arrived at the hospital. And he'd been dead for a long time before he arrived at the hospital. It could be that technical thing that you are not dead until a doctor have pronounced you dead. Because there's rules for it. That's why I don't know. He has been sitting in jail the entire time. He's found guilty, life without parole. This is a civil trial to try and get a new case. So he has been found guilty. He's 100% guilty according to the American justice system.
See, Danny said something too that made me think, yeah, then again, he'd have to hit the exact same spot to create the 2 extra.
Jamie, can you read this one from Brandon?
No.
Thank you, Brandon. Some would count it 7. We need additional holes, ME. The trial was in 19, yes. It happened 18, trial happened in 19. I think his appeal was denied in 2022.
I mean, yeah.
I don't know. That's why I'm saying, as we do always, we go by this trial. I can speculate all I want. I didn't watch the first trial. I don't know if the son was lying his butt off. I don't know if when he took the stand, he came off as the most dishonest person in the world. I don't know if I know there was some video that wasn't there, but I don't know anything. That's why I'm sitting here doing I don't know anything. I haven't really learned anything today, other than what you wonderful people have told me in chat. I don't know anything, because so far we just have, she had some holes. She didn't really notice him, the EMT, and she had vomit in her hair. That's what I've gathered so far. And then I had something mounted on my wall that fell down, and when I came back, they were arguing about leading questions. So I don't even know what that was about. Yeah, and the AED device said no shock, so it didn't detect a shockable rhythm. It could, so there must have been some kind of heart thing. It is available if you follow Trial TV Live. They covered it, I believe, 2 or 3 weeks ago.
What, the whole trial? This one?
Yes. Do I think the Karen Reed jury got it right? They didn't get anything. They were hung. So she is going to trial again. I don't believe they got that part wrong, but if they had found her guilty, she would have been guilty in the eyes of the law. I have been more cases than not. I disagree with the jury, but I'm pretty sure the American justice system don't care. People will still go to prison no matter how much I think it's redonkulous.
Mm-hmm.
Who was pressing this guy be charged to begin with? The local police?
Yep.
I didn't watch the first trial. I don't know anything.
Well, they immediately, honed in on him. So.
Yeah, and probably because she had had an affair before, and her friends said she was leaving him. That's normally what would get anyone in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. But Jamie, it's time to go make yourself some dinner. No, lunch. And we'll be back in, I don't know, what time is it? We'll be back in roughly 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to watch the full trial while this is going on, because it was a long trial as well.
Yeah.
I mean, they are on a remote farm in Iowa. There's easier ways to disperse of her than taking her to the hospital. There's a lot of accidents that can happen on a farm that is more convincing than this one. And again, with her dizziness, falling over in the hog pen.
And then going somewhere to get something and falling and hurting herself.
No, I'm just saying with her dizziness, falling over in a hog pen. And you don't need to cover anything up.
No, but I'm saying she was, that's what he testified to.
Jamie, if you want to hide a crime, falling in a hog pen is a very good place to hide a crime, because hogs eat everything.
Yeah, but she was.
It's
she
not.
was just
I know she said she was dizzy and blah blah. It has nothing to do with that. If you want to cover up a crime in a hog farm, you don't slap someone twice in the back with a hoe. You say they passed out in a hog pen when they were out feeding the pigs.
Okay.
But yeah, who looked at the lovers she had? Because she seemed to be a floozy. So yeah.
She seemed to have a lot of problems. Yeah.
Well, you ladies are problematic, Jamie.
That's what I hear.
Yeah, or falling into the manure tank. Great way, because the fumes will get you. So I don't know. That's why we watch the trials, to try and figure out what, if any, did happen. But we won't have a soil hardness expert in this trial, sadly. That is how Bella Guinness got rid of many people.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that pigs will eat, well, they'll at least try and get to the marrow. Hey, Money G. The coat had 4 holes in it. I don't know. I haven't seen any pictures of it. So probably right. I don't know. We'll find it out. Yeah. I don't know if they had a... Well, no, it was a pig farm, so I don't know. But they must have had a feeding something. Just watch the 48 hour for a quick review. Yeah, I'll find the link and everyone can go watch that. I read most of it earlier. The first witness wasn't that good. Pigs will eat anything but the shoes. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, Farrell. And Danny said that too. And I was just like, yeah.
Yeah, but again, if she's falling over on it, she would have to fall the exact same spot twice. That's just as unlikely.
Yeah, but there could be, yeah. Anyways.
That's just as unlikely, in my opinion, that unless it's, let's say it's...
Farrell, do you want to come debate him?
If it's something like that, maybe, but if you want to say it's impossible to do swinging the rake twice, it's also impossible to do falling on it twice. That's physics doesn't change just because you do it yourself. As a man who's been single for a long time, I know that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
I can understand why there's only 4 holes in the jacket, but I'm saying she still has 6 holes in her back, and they would need to be different places. He could have been slapping her and then pressing it down too. It's I don't know. Need to get to 13 holes. That's why I want an ME to come and talk about what happened and what the evidence shows. I don't know anything. I am just speculating. And I'm just doing what I always do. I'll try to be the contrarian who says, well, it could also be, because if we're just all in agreement, then it gets boring watching a trial with 40 witnesses if we all sit and say, nah. I'm here to make you think. I'm just asking the questions, man.
Nah.
I was on SEAL Team 3. I was an emergency diver. And me and Arnold in the jungle were fighting the rebels. Now I'm off grid. That's my Jesse Ventura.
What exhibit are you referring to?
I'm going to make this 100, Your Honor.
All right.
100. Because it is 100% correct.
So you literally built a cannon?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
All
right, I'm in love.
Go back. Please do that again. Oh, that was the cutest thing I've ever seen.
While I'm waiting for this, did you, whether it's true or not, believe that Mr. Randolph had slept with your wife?
I wouldn't have cared.
You wouldn't have cared?
No.
Did you believe he had slept with your wife?
No.
Did you believe he slept with your mother-in-law?
Probably did. Everybody has.